And I'm muted. And we're back. When I've tried to multi-stream to Kick, it's slowed down my internet connection. Like it's made like the browser, like the videos all lag, so until I have to go to Kick. I don't know. Kick is a little bit more experimental. What happened, Erlalda? Welcome in. We restarted so we could go live on YouTube as well as Twitch. So welcome back Twitch. Welcome in YouTube. Yes. Yes. So viewers, chatters, please refresh. Little in. We are going to start with news highlights on week 49 of Israel's genocide. Then we're going to follow that up with week 50. We have 2 weeks of news highlights to get through from the electronic intifada. Shout outs to the EI. Thank you for all the amazing work you do. We love Electronic Intifada. Knight Rider, like, share, subscribe. Yes, thank you. Sinister Hand, hello from the YouTube's world. Let's go.
Attention alien army.
Liz!
Raid incoming. I repeat, a raid incoming.
Lizard raid.
Random Lazy Lizards Lounge raided your channel with 4 viewers.
Oh, good.
Oh my goodness gracious. Fancy Felipe Floppe. Welcome. Oh. They activated. Let's go. I guess the 6 months is over. Is that what this is? You had to wait 6 months. Now you're Felipe Floppe again? Or is this like a totally different person? Yeah, I got it. Hell yeah. Brainergy. Let's go. I took my meds today. Awesome. Let's see. Going to give a wrench over to Knight Rider on YouTube. Let's go. Okay. Yes, we are multi-streaming today. We've got the YouTube and Twitch going.
Here is a summary of some of the latest developments in Gaza and the West Bank, and we'll share some reportage highlights from the Electronic Intifada's contributors there. Early Tuesday morning, while families were sleeping,
Thank you,
Israel
Arnaldo.
bombed the massive encampment in the sand dunes of Al-Mawasi in Khan Yunis, designated by Israel as a so-called safe zone or humanitarian area, with a series of airstrikes,
Fishnets.
killing at least 40 and injuring dozens more. Rescuers, including Palestinian Civil Defense, searched for survivors of the attack, digging through the sand with their bare hands. Witnesses told Al Jazeera that fires were burning and Israeli surveillance drones circled overhead while people searched for any sign of their loved ones. The heavy Israeli bombs, made in the United States and enthusiastically delivered by the Biden-Harris administration, obliterated at least 22 out of the 40 people killed so completely that their bodies were not even recoverable. Tents melted into the sand, leaving craters in the dunes up to 30 feet deep. A spokesperson for the Gaza Civil Defense Corps said that initial assessments suggest that the attack was, quote, one of the worst heinous massacres in this frenzied war. The spokesperson added that it was extremely difficult retrieving the bodies of people killed in the massacre. Israel claimed that Hamas had set up a command center in the encampment for displaced people. In a statement on Tuesday, Hamas flatly rejected Israel's claims. The political party stated, quote, "This is a clear lie that aims to justify these ugly crimes." The resistance has denied several times that any of its members exist within civilian gatherings or using these places for military purposes. Videos showed displaced Palestinians who survived the massacre on Tuesday reconstructing tents out of wood, plastic, and cloth later in the day. Our senior editor, Maureen Claire Murphy, reports that Israel has instructed civilians to move to Al-Mawasi, an open coastal area lacking infrastructure to meet the needs of displaced people, when issuing evacuation orders in other areas of Gaza. Israel most recently ordered Palestinians to evacuate to Al-Mawasi on August 24th, according to the UN. Israel has repeatedly struck facilities being used as shelters for displaced people in Gaza, often claiming without evidence that they were being used as command centers by Hamas and other resistance groups, despite the vast tunnel networks used by resistance fighters, Maureen writes. Over the weekend, the Israeli military attacked the Halima al-Sadiya school, sheltering hundreds of displaced Palestinians in Jabalia al-Nazla in northern Gaza. The attack, which occurred without warning on Saturday, killed 4 people and injured several others. That same day, 4 Palestinians, including a child, were killed when Israeli warplanes bombed the Amr ibn al-As school north of Gaza City, which was also being used as a shelter. The human rights group Euromed Monitor stated that, quote, since the beginning of August, the Israeli occupation army has bombed 16 schools being used as shelters in the Gaza Strip, noting that all but one of the targeted schools are in the northern half of Gaza. Maureen writes that, quote, the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructure in Gaza's north, including facilities serving as shelters, is part of Israel.
Yeah, Arnaldo, I feel very similar. Arnaldo on Twitch says it's so important to cover this, and the only way I could do it is with you guys. Every time I just think, if it's this hard for me to watch, how hard must it be to live it? And I can't imagine. Yeah. And Christina, I think it's probably fine. We just gotta be careful. Like, I know I can't comment on it too much. Oh. But yeah, I'm thinking about it too, and I'm really worried about them, and hope that other people are closer in contact with them than I am and will be able to give us some updates. Just a name thing, my bad. I don't know exactly what the boundaries are. Liz over on Twitch or over on the YouTubes. I mean, what's good? I got a new vape yesterday. I upgraded to a pod, a reusable, refillable pod system. Got a Vapresso. Pretty iridescent color. Thank you, Ronaldo. Is it good? So I'll be honest, I don't love. I mean, it could just be this juice, but like I don't love it as much as I love like the Geek Bar. Like Geek Bar is still like better, but it's good. It's good. Yeah, but yeah, I really needed to do something that was less wasteful than buying like 3 of these every week and throwing, having to throw them away. They hit so good. They taste delicious, and this is a little trickier. Gotta learn how to work the coil and shit. But yeah, Vapepresso was the brand that was recommended. I maybe should have gone with the Lux, but or the Pro. But he said the only difference was the Pro was that it has a stream, like a screen. Yeah, it's pricey and it's wasteful. And I wanted something that was less harmful to the environment, less uh impactful. The coil, the battery, the screen, the plastic, all of it. Yeah, so I upgraded yesterday, and I'm still learning curve, but we're gonna talk about vape in the YouTube chat. All right, just playing Garak. Yeah, the refillables are nice. Yeah, yeah, I'm new to it, so I'm still learning the ropes. But yeah, I got blue raspberry peach nicotine vape juice. Actually, need to refill this guy. All right, let's get back into the news. Yeah, waiting for new coils to prime. Yeah, for the coil to wick. It's like, okay, I just gotta refill it and set it. And you're like, if you're already low, like on your, that's, yeah. Oh. Usually try to keep a coil going for at least 2 weeks. Okay. Yeah, my siblings like, you'll see, you'll figure it out. Like it'll, you'll just learn as you go. And I'm like, or I could be, or you could help me. All right. Right? You need like a vape doula. Yeah, the guy at the vape store was pretty helpful, but like he uses disposables himself. So I'm like, but he was pretty knowledgeable, seemed to knew what he was talking about. But I'm like the person like who I found was very helpful is Water Porch. You should be following and supporting, and I think we have their PayPal linked in Twitch chat at least. Yeah, there's their PayPal and Cash App if you want to help support them. They really do need urgent funds for an emergency move and upcoming surgery. LT9K. Yeah, we like Water Porch. Friend of the stream, for sure. Okay. Rambled on enough. Hold on, I gotta move a window. This is confusing me. Yeah. Oh, nice, LT9K. You should tell Lance to raid me sometime. Although it's funny, I usually take my break when Lance ends his stream. I've never been lucky to get the surfs raid, but maybe one day. I am following them. Waterport is great, sweet streamer. I see them all the time. Yeah, and they do really need our help. Yeah. Surf it. Ha 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 ha. Ha. That was actually pretty good. Easelcat. Well, I'm doing it on Streamlabs, not on the OBS, but I was able to check that out. But I still need to switch over to OBS. Like I still need to set up a lot of elements, and I didn't want to do that live. And then I actually tried doing it live, and I'm like, well, it's freezing up my camera and shit. So, CJ. You went until 6:20 yesterday? Wow. Yeah. You never know. AC is back. Let's go. Yeah, OBS is like way less taxing on my computer. So I'm like, I do want to switch. I just haven't done it yet. But so, we're still doing the multi-stream thing when we can. I was looking at my YouTube analytics and I'm at 199 subscribers. So this might be the 200 subscriber celebration stream. Maybe if one more person subscribes to my YouTube channel. Bless you, Mom. Sneeze from the other room. OBS is kind of mammoth program, but I've never tried Streamlabs. Yeah. Yeah, Streamlabs uses a lot more RAM. Nalda, I don't know what the blank is. But yeah. Okay, AC. I haven't even talked to my mom about it yet. And your Jen seems very tepid. Thank you. Lainey. Oh, I saw, yeah, being unfollowing people or being unsub to people that you are intending to sub to or follow. Yes, Twitch and YouTube do that. Where I'm like, how did I lose a bunch of subscribers? Or and it's not a bunch usually, so I'm like, it's not like I put out something that offended people, but it'll be like one or two, and I'm like, huh. Twitter does that too. I cut out. I don't know. I think I said Jen seems tepid. Well, we could talk about that more in private. Yeah, I just figured out a couple things in OBS today where I was like, oh, adding this, so stuff. Dreamy stuff. Okay, let's go. I'm not prepared for this. We've been in this for 3 minutes and we took a break. Yeah, same, Lainey. Like I definitely learned all of this the hard way. A good captions plugin too. Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, thank you, Arnalda. Pro stream, professional streamer. It's true, technically. It is my profession. Whether or not I'm like good at it is a different question, but I do it professionally. Okay. We have so much news to get to. You know, Arnaldo, that was me earlier. Like, I was not feeling well, and then like I started like interacting with stream more, and it like gave me more energy. But yeah, the news is fucking depressing. Any good news? Uh, this looks good. Yeah, the good news is that
These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
Yeah. I mean, MSNBC is reporting Israel officials say entire senior command of Hezbollah is, quote, eliminated. I'm going to wait till other sources come out about that before we watch MSNBC's coverage, because, you know, MSNBC. But yeah, we're gonna, yeah, no, all the news is bad. It's all bad. Sorry. Yeah, there's still no I haven't seen like uh a civilian death toll or casualty number from the strike in Beirut. But they can claim that they eliminated Hezbollah commanders, like, or an entire Hezbollah command in one strike. Maybe. Maybe. But if Israel's saying it, it's probably not true. And so, yeah, press X to doubt, you know what I mean? Okay. All right, let's get back into it. Komradsky says, I heard it was one special forces commander. Yeah. Israel's going to claim it was like, oh, we killed, it was everyone who died was Hezbollah, and that's the only thing we did. That was it. Hands off, no more. We're fine. Fuck you, Israel. This whole attack in Lebanon is absolutely beyond the pale. Like, this is so far out of bounds of what they've even, like, previously designated as the rules of engagement within their warfare. Pager explosions, the attack in the suburbs, like, this is going way, way far.
Day, 4 Palestinians, including a child, were killed when Israeli warplanes bombed the Amr ibn al-As school north of Gaza City, which was also being used as a shelter. The human rights group Euromed Monitor stated that, quote, since the beginning of August, the Israeli occupation army has bombed 16 schools being used as shelters in the Gaza Strip, noting that all but one of the targeted schools are in the northern half of Gaza. Maureen writes that, quote, the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructure in Gaza's north, including facilities serving as shelters, is part of Israel's strategy to create a coercive environment in order to forcibly transfer the population to central and southern Gaza, according to Euromed. The rights group pointed to reports in Israeli media about a plan to depopulate northern Gaza drafted by Israeli reservist commanders and soldiers. The scheme, reportedly presented to Israel's cabinet and other senior officials, was spearheaded by Giora Eiland, the retired major general and close advisor to Israel's defense minister, who called for creating conditions for the spread of epidemics in Gaza as a form of biological warfare. It calls for an estimated 300,000 civilians to evacuate northern Gaza in a 1-week period, after which the area would be besieged and Hamas fighters would be made to surrender or be killed. For much more on the attacks on al-Mawasi and the critical situation in the north of Gaza, read Maureen Claire Murphy's latest report, Israel Kills 40 in Gaza Humanitarian Zone, on electronicintifada.net. Airstrikes and ground attacks continued against Palestinians across the northern and central strip this week, including in Deir al-Balah and in Gaza City. Attacks on Monday alone across Gaza killed more than 30 Palestinians. On Monday, Israel bombed an apartment building in western Gaza City and attacked the Jabalia refugee camp, killing 6 Palestinians, including 2 children. Hossam Shabat, a journalist working in northern Gaza, said on Monday that, quote, today at the massacre scene in northern Gaza, a young girl no more than a year old was killed. Her head was wide open and brain matter was exposed. Paramedics had to stuff her head with cloth so that her body can hold up
Jesus
to be
fucking
buried.
Christ.
On Tuesday, hours after the massacre in al-Mawasi Khan Yunis, Israeli airstrikes targeted a shelter in Burej refugee camp near Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip. Our contributor Abu Bakr Abed has been reporting constant tank shelling, airstrikes, and fire from helicopter gunships in and around Deir al-Balah over the past few days. Earlier in the week, the UN and its local partners in Gaza ended the second phase of the polio vaccination campaign, reaching more than 256,000 children in the southern cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. The Israeli military ordered Palestinians in the northern city of Beit Lahia to be forcibly displaced amidst the beginning of the third phase of the polio vaccination campaign in the north. In preparation for the mass vaccination campaign, international humanitarian organizations, including the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, were denied permits by Israel to cross checkpoints into the north, according to Al Jazeera. The Geneva-based Euromed Human Rights Monitor stated that Israel is critically undermining Gaza's polio vaccination campaign in the north. On Tuesday, Israel bombed a food stall in the Tufah neighborhood located between 3 deconflicted centers designated as safe for providing polio vaccinations to children in northern Gaza, the rights group said. They stated that, quote, from the beginning of the polio vaccination campaign on September 1st, the Israeli army has ignored all calls for a humanitarian truce or a temporary cessation of attacks during vaccination hours. Instead, it has continued its military attacks on all areas of the Gaza Strip, from the north to the south, launching dozens of air raids targeting sites near vaccination centers in the southern, central, and now northern sections of the Strip. Mohamed Hadi, the United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Palestine, released a statement on Tuesday saying that 12 UN staff members, quote, whose movement was fully coordinated with the Israeli army and whose details were shared with them in advance, were stopped on its way to North Gaza on Monday to support the third phase of the Gaza Strip-wide polio vaccination campaign. While at the checkpoint, the team was informed that the Israeli army wanted to hold 2 of the UN staff members in the convoy for further questioning, Hadi said. The situation escalated quickly, with soldiers pointing their weapons directly toward the convoy personnel. Israeli troops encircled the convoy and fired shots before Israeli military tanks and a bulldozer, quote, proceeded to ram the UN vehicles from the front and from the back, compacting the convoy with the UN staff inside, according to Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the UN Secretary General. He added that the bulldozer dropped debris on the first vehicle, while Israeli soldiers threatened staff, making it impossible for them to safely exit the vehicles. The convoy remained held at gunpoint while senior-level UN officials attempted to de-escalate the situation with the Israelis. The 2 staff were eventually questioned one by one and then released. After 7.5 hours at the checkpoint, the convoy returned to base without being able to fulfill its humanitarian mission to support the polio campaign. Despite the assault on the UN convoy and the enormous obstacles for humanitarian aid missions in the north, the Palestinian Ministry of Health and the UN teams were able to vaccinate 77,000 children against polio on Tuesday. This week, we published a personal narrative from Gaza-based writer Saida Hamdona, who describes how being forcibly displaced multiple times is affecting her young children and her family's overall health. Saida writes, quote, Zakaria, who's only 8, has started having difficulty speaking. It seems he grasped the realities of the tragedy we were living. He asked questions even philosophers couldn't answer. Why are we here? What did we do wrong? When the war ends, where will we live? Calamities rarely travel alone. Recently, hepatitis A has spread among the tents. Hepatitis A is most commonly transmitted through human waste. Like everyone else in the camp, we use the mosque bathroom. Some of my relatives contracted the disease as a result and suffered from its symptoms, which included a loss of appetite and an inability to taste food for 2 weeks. Without irony, doctors recommended avoiding canned foods, eating more vegetables, and consuming honey. As if they didn't know we can only have canned food, can only imagine the luxury of fresh vegetables, and are barely able to remember what honey looks like, let alone how it tastes. And we are relatively blessed, us, the displaced people. At least we have some bread and food in the south. Our relatives in the northern sector don't even have canned food or a loaf of bread. Despite the harsh conditions we have endured and continue to endure, we hold on to hope and faith that tomorrow will be better. We may have lost our homes and security, but we have not lost our humanity and dignity. That's from Saida Hamdona's feature, Dream of Returning Home Keeps Family Moving Forward, on electronicintifada.net. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli soldiers withdrew from Jenin refugee camp in the north after a 10-day raid in which essential infrastructure was destroyed, at least 21 Palestinians were killed, and more than 130 injured. Since the end of August, Israeli forces have besieged other refugee camps across the northern West Bank. Our senior editor, Maureen Claire Murphy, writes that this past week, Israeli occupation forces killed both an American woman during a protest in Beita, a village near Nablus, and a 13-year-old Palestinian girl in a separate but nearby incident on Friday. In the latter incident, Bana Amjad Bakr was struck by a bullet in her chest while in her home during confrontations that erupted in Karyut village, also near Nablus, after settlers raided and attacked the community. The girl's father said that she was shot by Israeli occupation forces while in her room with her sisters, the official Palestinian news agency Wafa reported. Defense for Children International Palestine stated that on the previous day, quote, Israeli forces shot and killed a 16-year-old Palestinian boy in the northern occupied West Bank and then desecrated his body. The teen, Majid Abu Zaina, quote, was shot in the leg by an Israeli soldier from a distance of 30 meters in Al-Farah refugee camp south of Tubas. Israeli soldiers approached Majid as he lay injured on the ground and prevented a Palestinian ambulance from reaching him, according to Defense for Children International Palestine. Majid pleaded with Israeli soldiers to let the ambulance help him, but they ignored him. And one of them ordered him to lift up his shirt, quote, which revealed a homemade explosive device that Majid was allegedly carrying. The soldier, quote, then shot Majid at point blank range in the neck, killing him, according to the children's rights group. Maureen writes that video shows an Israeli military bulldozer moving the boy's body with its front blade. The soldiers operating the bulldozer drove around Al-Farah with the teen's body in the blade for an hour before dumping him in another area of the camp.
Jesus
Palestinian
Christ.
Center for Human Rights said that the boy's abdomen was torn open while being carried by the bulldozer and his internal organs were exposed. His body was, quote, disfigured and unrecognizable when it was finally retrieved following the withdrawal of Israeli troops hours later. The U.S. citizen killed in Beita on Friday was identified as 26-year-old Aishanur Egi, a resident of
Not the absolute worst one that I've heard so far, but it's pretty fucking bad.
Seattle, Washington. The International Solidarity Movement stated that Egi was an activist with a group and is the 18th person to be killed in the context of Beita's protests since 2020, following the establishment of Aviatar, a settlement outpost on village land. Israeli troops fired tear gas and live ammunition during confrontations that ensued following afternoon prayers held during the protest, forcing demonstrators to retreat toward the village. Demonstrators were congregated on the outskirts of the village, some 150 to 200 meters away from Israeli troops, according to Jonathan Pollock, an Israeli anti-occupation activist who was present when Egi was shot in the head. The situation was quiet when a sniper positioned on a rooftop fired 2 live bullets, he said. Quote, I found her lying on the ground, bleeding from her head, Pollock said, adding that she had a very weak pulse. Egi was evacuated to a hospital, but efforts to save her life failed. Saad Dahab, a resident of Beita, told Wafa news agency that after the shots rang out, quote, I saw the soldiers dancing happily at what they had done. That's all from Maureen Claire Murphy's report. Witness, Israeli troops in West Bank intentionally killed U.S. activist on electronicintifada.net. Palestinians in Beita held a massive funeral for Aishanur Egi on Monday. The U.S. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel said that Washington will not be conducting its own investigation into Aishanur Egi's execution in the occupied West Bank. Instead, he said that U.S. officials expect Israel to investigate itself. And U.S. President Joe Biden provided cover for Israel, suggesting last night that the bullet that hit Aishanur in the head had ricocheted off the ground, calling it, quote, an accident. Meanwhile, after Israeli troops withdrew from Jenin, leaving massive destruction of roads and infrastructure, local residents helped clean up the streets and repair the damage. And funerals were held for resistance fighters who were killed during confrontations with Israeli soldiers in the 10-day invasion. In Tulkarem, the Israeli army partially withdrew last week, but reinvaded the city on Monday. The Palestine Red Crescent Society stated on Tuesday that Israeli forces assaulted members of their medical team in Tulkarem. Israeli soldiers, the physicians say, targeted one of their volunteer paramedics with live bullets while he was providing first aid to an injured person in Tulkarem camp. Israeli forces also arrested 2 EMTs from inside the Tulkarem Emergency Medical Services Center after storming and surrounding it, the Red Crescent added. The medics were eventually released. And finally, we wanted to bring you some images and videos from journalists and others in Gaza that highlight the resilience, joy, and determination of the Palestinian people. Kids in a makeshift tent classroom in the north, organized by the educational initiative Gaza Great Minds, showed off their English language skills.
I get up. I do movement. I watch cartoons. I play school. I go to bed.
And our dear contributor Abu Bakr Abed posted a photo of a magnificent work of art that his father Wissam made especially for the Electronic Intifada. It says, "From Deir Balah, Gaza to the Electronic Intifada with love and hope." And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza.
All right. More.
Here's a summary of some of the latest developments in Gaza and the West Bank. And we'll also share some reportage highlights from the Electronic Intifada's contributors there. Israel attacked Gaza City in the north and Burej refugee camp in the central area on Tuesday. As people rushed their loved ones who were killed and injured in the Burej bombing to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir Balah, Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud reported that medical supplies are lacking, bandages and pain medications are unavailable, and the hospital, quote, has turned into a stage for funerals. The attacks on Burej followed an attack on the nearby Nusayrat refugee camp on Monday, where at least 10 Palestinians were killed. At least 25 others were killed around Gaza on Monday, including in Gaza City, Beit Lahia, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. Journalists reported that the Israeli military has been attacking and demolishing homes in Nusayrat in order to widen the area around the Netzarim corridor where the army is stationed and has bisected the Gaza Strip. Earlier in the week, Israel attacked homes and residential buildings in Khan Yunis, Rafah, Gaza City, and Jabalia refugee camp, where Israeli forces bombed a kindergarten that was being used as a shelter for forcibly displaced families. The attack killed at least 10 and injured dozens more as they slept. Here's Al Jazeera's Anas Al-Sharif reporting over the weekend.
I'm here in Jabalia refugee camp near the Yemeni hospital, where Israeli warplanes have fired a missile, directly and without warning, at the Al Suwaidan family home. Medical teams and civil defense units are recovering the dead and injured. They're also searching the rubble for a number of missing people.
Israeli warplanes targeted the house, completely destroying it and killing several people. Others are missing. Our teams are trying to find them and recover the bodies of the dead. The problem is that we cannot reach all of the victims. It's difficult to work in this area, which is completely destroyed.
This man was just rescued from under the rubble. He is one of the survivors of the Israeli attack on this house, which was full of people. Scenes like this are repeated every night as the genocide and war against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip continues. Every Israeli strike kills people, wounds people, and leaves others missing.
Anas Al-Sharif, Al Jazeera, Mukhayyam Jabalia.
That was Al Jazeera's Anas Al-Sharif reporting from Jabalia. On Saturday, Israel bombed a fuel refinery in northern Gaza used to transform plastic into
Beyond,
gasoline
welcome in.
that is required to operate civil defense vehicles and electricity generators for hospitals. Homes were destroyed and workers were killed in the attack, according to reporter Abdelkader Sabah. The Gaza government media office stated on Sunday that a journalist was killed. Abdullah Shakshak, who worked for several local and regional Arabic language media outlets, was targeted by an Israeli quadcopter drone in Rafah on Saturday. More than 170 journalists have been killed by Israel since the genocide began in October 2023. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza has released a 649-page document listing the names, ages, genders, and ID numbers of every Palestinian recorded killed in Israeli attacks in the last 11 and a half months of this genocide. The number of Palestinians killed is estimated to be much higher than the recorded death count of 40,000, since thousands more are missing or buried under the rubble. The first 226 pages list the names of children 18 years old and younger, including 14 pages of newborns and babies under a year old. And the last 11 pages list the names of Palestinian elders from the ages of 77 to 101 years old.
14 pages of dead babies. What the fuck is going on? Sorry, I'm back.
all older than the state of Israel itself. A coalition of 15
people older than the state of Israel itself. It's important to remember, you know. They're when they kill elders, they're killing people who were born before Israel was created and have lived their entire lives through the occupation. Like, it's all so fucking sad. It's all so fucking horrible. And like Lainey said, like, despite my immense, expanded, you know, well thought out vocabulary, I am struggling to find words. I mean, I struggle to find my words all the time.
International aid organizations have announced that as a consequence of Israel's ongoing obstruction of aid, 83% of required food does not make it past the crossing points at the Gaza-Israel boundaries, accelerating the humanitarian and health disaster for the entire population of Gaza and placing almost 500,000 people at risk of starvation. The aid groups add that a record low average of 69 aid trucks per day entered Gaza in August, compared to 500 per working day last year, which was already not enough to meet people's needs. In August, more than 1 million people did not receive any food rations in southern and central Gaza. The United Nations Health Cluster reported this week that this denial of aid into Gaza is also expanding the hygiene and health safety crisis, with Israel denying soap, shampoo, and detergents into Gaza. The cluster says that, quote, community kitchens and healthcare facilities lack the minimum cleaning materials, worsening the unsanitary conditions in shelters and clinics. The UN also warned that the upcoming rainy season will exacerbate the already fragile shelter conditions. Quote, with the magnitude of destruction to urban areas, roads, and critical infrastructure this year, flooding patterns can be expected to be unpredictable and disastrous for those seeking shelter. Most displaced people are sheltering in small, overcrowded makeshift shelters on self-settled sites, typically having deteriorated plastic sheeting for roofing, while the remaining live in tents, many of which are overcrowded. Others are sheltering in damaged or unfinished buildings, which are unsafe. With an average of only 2 truckloads of shelter-related items per week entering South Gaza in August, the UN's shelter cluster estimates that partners would need 2 years to deliver the equivalent of the most basic winterization support needed now. At least 25,000 sealing off kits, or 25 truckloads, need to be delivered per week to South Gaza for people to be supported before more significant rainfall and lower temperatures arrive in November. This week, we're highlighting a feature by our contributor Fida Al-Kedra in Gaza about a 10-year-old girl who was killed earlier this month while she was playing in the street wearing her pink roller skates. She writes, I reached Hussam Abu Ajwa on his phone. What do you ask a man who has lost a child? What does a bereaved father say? Abu Ajwa, whose daughter Tala, 10, was killed on September 5th, reached for the words of Mahmoud Darwish, a reply the late poet, while ailing and waiting to die, gave to a reporter's question about how he felt. Bruised feelings and broken thoughts, and some scratched up memories. The doctor says nothing is fatal, just a little loss to the soul. Tala had been playing with her friends when a bomb struck a downstairs apartment in Gaza City, killing her on the spot and adding her name to the list of the nearly 17,000 children Israel has killed in Gaza since October last year. A photograph of Tala under a white shroud wearing her pink roller skates subsequently went viral on social media. Not more than 5 minutes had gone by after Tala left with her pink skates when Abu Ajwa said he heard a loud explosion. I ran quickly from the 3rd floor to the street, he said. Abu Ajwa found Tala's body face down, covered in rubble and dust, only her roller skates visible. He picked up her battered body and rushed to a hospital. It was too late. The medical staff could not save Tala's life. Tala aspired to be a dentist, her father said. The day before she was killed, Abu Ajwa said, a bomb struck near their building and sent Tala running to the safety of his arms. I'm sad because over the last year, my daughter had to experience so much fear and so many things children shouldn't know, like starvation and displacement, Abu Ajwa said. And then she was killed while skating, trying to make herself happy. For more, read Fida Al-Qadra's feature, Pink Skates and Deadly Bombs on Electronic Intifada.
Zayday, thank you so much for subscribing on YouTube. You are subscriber number 200. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah. Appreciate it. You know, it's awkward as fuck timing to be celebrating anything when we're dealing with this. What's up, Zayday 420? Hi. Thank you for being the 200th subscriber to my YouTube channel. That's very exciting. Yeah, little hype moment. Oh, things are happening, chat. Things are happening.
Fada.net. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers attacked children and teachers at an elementary school northwest of Jericho on Monday. The Palestinian news agency Wafa said that armed Israelis stormed the Arab al-Kaaba.
This is turning into a revolution.
Adrian 69 Scout Free Pal Adrian 69 Comrade Scout Adrian 69 Boo I love the new emotes. Zayday_420 subscribed to your channel for 12 months.
12 months! Zayday! Thank you so much for being part of the community for a whole freaking year! Thank you. Really appreciate that. No, Luz, it wasn't a raid, it was a sub. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. If anyone wants to get a hype train started, it just takes one other generous person with 100 bits or a sub event of any kind. And we can get some frogs turned gay. For some frogs. Oh my god, thank you guys.
Cheer 100, cheer 100, Diesel Cat cheered 100, Night Rider 100, cheered 100 bits.
This crap, gay, frogs, friggin' frogs, it's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay, frogs.
Thank you, Diesel Cat. Thank you, Night Rider.
I'm not doing that.
Cheer 100.
Thank you, AC.
_anti_corporatist cheered 100 bits.
Gay, frogs, friggin' frogs, I don't like a frog. Gay, friggin' frogs. Frogs!
Hello, motherfucker.
Friggin' frog crap! Won't you fight the frogs? It's not funny! I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Frogs!
Hello, motherfucker.
Place point.
All right. What can I play that won't get me clapped?
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Hello, motherfucker.
Thank you so much. This should be all right. Oh, but that's part of the benefit of doing it on OBS is I could just pause YouTube and be like, sorry, YouTube, there's a hype train. And then come back to YouTube when the hype train's over. Like, you gotta come to the fun side. We could do music.
Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic. Sipping all this drink, I just spilled it on my fabric. If you have the knowledge, then you know
you need the praxis.
Red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking. I don't worship idols, man, that shit just be so corny. I be with the masses, cause the rich kids be so boring. I be on the internet whenever I feel lonely, and I rather feel like Che Guevara than ever be Tony. Tell my mama when I grow, oh, sorry, I'm a communist. Take a flight to Cuba, roll a blunt right in that bit, all up in Jamaica. Swear you need to see this shit. She don't wear no makeup, wanna give me all of it.
Chat, we've got 2 minutes on this hype train. Get to level 2. We are 54% of the way there.
Smoke weed every day.
It is 4 motherfucking 20.
We should take like all of it. We should take like all of it. Careful who you talk to, cause they fed and they be counterfeit. I switched out the AR for the AK like a Soviet. Say I get her high like some opiates. Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic. Sipping all this drink, I just spilled it on my fabric. If you have that knowledge, then you know you need the red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking. Sometimes I feel like Karl Marx, but that would be dogmatic. Sipping all this drink, I just spilled it on my fabric. If you have the knowledge, then you know you need the praxis. Red book on my lap, you can never catch me lacking.
Orange man bad, China scary. Fund the police and grow our military. Ignore the fact that Biden's dying. Keep hammering on how Trump is lying. The media is where we vent and manufacture your consent. We just want you all to feel much better before you remember to vote in November. And don't listen to those commies say
It's over. Over, Jover, Jover. Just admit that it is Jover. It's Jover.
it's over, Joe. It's over. Tell Joe to go as Jover. Just vote blue no matter who. Either way, the whole world's future rests on you. Your pack has us under their control. Fascism won't take root if you play your role. Ultimately, it's not our call, 'cause climate change will kill us all. Eventually, anyway, vote for Joe. I don't wanna hear you say it's Jover, Joe. It's Jover, Joe. It's Jover. Just admit that it is Joe. It's over, Joe. It's over.
The ultra rich.
It's Jover. It's Jover. It's over, Joe. It's Jover. Just admit that it's Jover. Oh, oh, Joe. It's over, Joe. Oh, 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 it's Jover.
Bernie was right. The ultra-rich are fucking up society for everyday Americans. That's why I'm proposing a national billionaire hunt. That's right, folks, we're going after the big game. I'm talking about a nationwide manhunt. We're going to bag us some billionaires. That's why I'm running for re-election. Some people might say, isn't this just class warfare? And to them, I say, yeah, it is. But who says class warfare can't be fun?
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
It's time to put on our big boy pants and big girl pants and big they-them pants and say enough is enough. We're going to take back our country 1 billionaire at a time.
Take the shot.
Let's call it The Purge, Billionaire Edition. Let's finish this job. I know we can. Fuck 'em.
$5 million ways to kill a CEO. Oh yeah. Fuck 'em. Right. Good afternoon, Carla. Good afternoon, chat. Thank you so much for the hype train. Thank you, Knight Rider, for all the bits. Thank you, AC. Thank you, Easel Cat. Thank you, Zayday, for resubscribing. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Carla. I hope you're doing all right. Thank you, LT9K. Okay, let's start this story over at least so we can get the full thing. Back to the content mines, back to the news. That was fun. We needed it. Could have been longer. All right.
.net. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers attacked children and teachers at an elementary school northwest of Jericho on Monday. The Palestinian news agency Wafa said that armed Israelis stormed the Arab al-Kabne school and assaulted students and teachers. The United Nations Education Cluster added that the settlers were armed with clubs and tied up the school's principal. Footage from the attack shows a group of male settlers marching into the school, and one can hear the screams of children and the teachers during the attack. The school employs 30 teachers who serve around 100 students, the UN said. When Israeli forces arrived, it was reported that they arrested the school principal. The Israeli police also confiscated the school's digital video recorder, which the police claimed was in order to review the incident. Video footage shows the identities of most of the assailants. One student told the Reuters news agency that, quote, "We were studying as usual in class. Then they started saying that settlers attacked the school. I was able to gather my siblings so that nothing happens to them. I was able to gather them in a classroom, and the settlers started banging on the class, trying to open it against our will." On Tuesday, Israeli settlers attacked the village of Khirbet al-Farisiya in the northern Jordan Valley. Wafa said that at least 4 settlers tried to steal livestock from one Palestinian resident of the village, quote, "but he bravely confronted them and prevented them from doing so." And finally, we wanted to bring you some images and videos from journalists and others in Gaza that highlight the resilience, joy, and determination of the Palestinian people. Palestinian teacher Isra Abu Mustafa created a classroom in a tent on the ruins of her destroyed house at the beginning of what would usually be the new school year. Journalist Hassan Isleh filmed this video of the young students eager to learn. And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. Let's talk about something that came out of ABC Australia, first major mainstream media to talk about the Hannibal Directive and how Israeli forces killed many, we've said many, if not most, of the Israeli citizens on October 7th in the kibbutz. Kibbutzim.
Yeah, we can't see the masthead here, but this is ABC Australia, so not the American ABC network, but ABC is the government broadcasting network in Australia and is just like the BBC and the CBC in Canada, reliably a voice of the state and the establishment. So it's quite remarkable to see that ABC Australia, national state broadcaster, is reporting seriously on the Hannibal Directive. And this was quite a long report. And if you read it, there's almost nothing in it that you wouldn't know if you had been reading the Electronic Intifada these past 11 months. They go back to many of the same sources we do, many of the same stories and episodes we do, but they're giving it the imprimatur of so-called respectable mainstream media instead of, the Electronic Intifada who gets banned by YouTube for being correct all the time. I just thought that was notable. And it reminded me of the story in the Times of London that we covered a few months ago, which was the first to cover the mass rapes hoax as a hoax rather than perpetuating it. So I just thought that was a significant moment. Whether it will open, sadly, I thought that the Times of London story might open the way for other mainstream media to start to debunk the mass rapes hoax. I think what happened instead is they just stopped covering it.
Yeah.
So rather than admit they were wrong and rather they would debunking it, I suspect that in the newsrooms they saw all the coverage we and other independent media did, and they said, "Yeah, this is a hoax. Let's just drop it." Because we saw the Israeli media pushing new sort of variations of the hoax over the last couple of months that did not get picked up in Western media as they normally would have done. So they haven't had the courage to debunk it, but they have at least not pushed it significantly further. But I don't know. I'm interested, Asa, you follow this story as closely as anyone. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, they are... we can't say for sure that they're copying our coverage, but they go back to a lot of the same sources. And the thing is, with this, it's all there. It's all been reported by us, by others. A lot of our sources come from Israelis, usually in Hebrew rather than in English, and it's all there. Like even Kamala Harris in that atrocious debate was saying 1,200 Israelis were killed by Hamas. Even the Israelis themselves admit that a small number of those were killed by the Israelis themselves. It has been reported in the mainstream media inside the Israeli entity, and it's all there. It's we think our working assumption, and we're making some efforts to try and quantify it more. Is that it's quite possible that most of those were killed. Most of the dead on the 7th of October were killed by Israel itself.
Yeah, and there's actually a new story indicating that. I mean, when you think you know everything, even
hey,
more
Mad
comes
Cat,
out.
welcome
so we
in.
Could show,
everyone go follow Mad Cat 79 Scotty.
Appeared in the Times of Israel in the last day or two. And here you see the headline: "Report shows IDF silence on fears ahead of Nova. Failure to react." So that headline doesn't tell you much. But there was a report on Israel's Channel 12 about what happened at this so-called rave, which we've been told, and Kamala Harris, we just heard her repeating it. The story goes there were hundreds of young people and they were just dancing, carefree, peace-loving young Israelis dancing, within sight of basically a concentration camp, the Gaza Strip, a couple of miles away, when they were horribly attacked and massacred and raped. And buried in this story, the Times of Israel is citing this long report, this sort of documentary from Channel 12, which we will be watching and analyzing more closely. I'm not sure if we'll do anything on it on the live stream, but we're going to take a close look at it and see what we need to report from it. But if we dig deeper into this story, again, which is sourced from Channel 12, this is the first time I'd seen this, talking about what happened at the Nova Festival. And
yeah, me too.
It says shortly thereafter, a tank arrived to assist in. Well, before I talk about that, they say there was a battle. What we were told all this time, there was a massacre. Now, what they're saying here is there was a battle, that there was hours of shooting in two directions between Israeli forces and Palestinian fighters. So not just sort of a one-sided massacre, but a battle. And then they say a tank arrived to assist in fighting off the Hamas assault, and the team inside managed to kill dozens of terrorists until being hit by an anti-tank missile. Well, we were also told that all those Apache helicopters firing indiscriminately at cars heading towards Gaza were only killing terrorists, so-called terrorists, when in fact it turned out that they were shooting at cars carrying Israeli civilians as well as Palestinian fighters, and doing so indiscriminately. And, if you're at a music festival with a tank, you cannot fire a tank shell in such a setting that is going to distinguish between so-called terrorists and anyone else there. So this looks to me like an indication. And again, I say, I had not seen before, and I asked other people who've been following this story. And Asa, again, I want to know what you think. Had you seen any report about a tank firing at the Nova Festival before?
No, it was new to me. A tank specifically, helicopters, yes, but not a tank. And I think yes. I mean, it's as you say. There's no way that kind of fire could distinguish between Palestinian fighters and the Israeli participants in the rave. And the thing is, the Nova Festival is kind of the key to it. Is the key to gauging just the percentage of the dead, the Israeli dead, and the actual figure is. They always say, at first they said 1,400, and then now they've reduced it to 1,200. But the actual figure is 1,151. But even that 1,151 is a large. We know that a large number of them were killed by Israel, and it was deliberately done. We know it was deliberately done as a matter of policy to carry out
Hannibal,
because of the Hannibal directive. Yeah. And it's the idea that there was tanks on the ground. We knew that there was battles, and the thing that one of the largest single numbers was at the Nova Festival. So the Nova, it's said to have been around 300 people killed there. So it's really key to it, I think, the Nova Festival, the dead there. But also the same picture was repeated in a lot of ways all around all of the border kibbutzim, or border's the wrong word, but the frontier kibbutzim, let's say, which is the term I've been using in a lot of my reporting. It wasn't that there was this terrible massacre that was often claimed. There were battles, that yes, the Israelis were overwhelmed by the Palestinian fighters, but there were battles. There was even at the Nova Festival, there was guards, there was security guards, there were civilians who were able to get arms, especially in the kibbutzes.
And there were soldiers. And
there were soldiers. And there were Shin Bet agents as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we can just flash up, just to remind people, that story from November, Tamara, when the Israeli police admitted that Apache helicopters had been used, that at least one Apache helicopter fired on civilians at the Nova Festival. So we knew that, but the tank was new to me and new to us. So yeah. I just thought that was important. And Asa, I think we're gonna try and dig into this more.
Yeah.
So much. And just remember the hundreds and hundreds of cars that were burned beyond recognition, evidence of a crime that happened, that were all quickly buried in the sand by the Israelis.
Yeah, and then of course at the even the Times of Israel story, which is based off this Channel 12 report that we again I say with the caveat that we have yet to analyze it in detail, talks about this fierce battle, and then sort of casually says, oh, and then the Hamas fighters went around raping people. Right. And none of it makes sense, because you can't, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. And of course, people will remember that the Sheryl Sandberg documentary, people who've been watching, who saw when we did the debunking of the Sheryl Sandberg documentary, The Mass Rapes, that guy Rami Davidian, who claimed to have found all these rape victims in the woods, and he was the only one there, but then he covered them all up so no one else would ever see. And then he fought off the 6 heavily armed Hamas fighters with a stick or whatever it was. So it's all this stuff that never adds up. But then you get these bits like the tank,
Yeah.
which tells you there's something here that we need to know.
Y'all go check out Electronic Intifada. Please subscribe and support them. Like the video. I can't thank them enough for their coverage and the work that they've been doing throughout this past year. Really sucks that we have to say that. Yeah. Links in chat if you want to go. Please like and subscribe to Electronic Intifada if you're not already. And they also stream on Twitch. So they do live streams. I think it's every Wednesday. It's their weekly live stream. But on YouTube and Twitch. All right.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show. For
Not a good
today.
morning, and it's a not
Indeed we do.
Thursday. Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
It's like we've got corruption. We've got this like blathering
3
idiots,
minutes of
perhaps
fucking
savant at times.
Situation. So lots to talk about from New York City. So we'll get into all of
That's
that.
right. Before we get to that, thank you to all of our premium. Quite a few have appreciated that, and it's gone quite viral
great
now
segment.
since. Yeah, this story has really captured the pop.com. Let's get to Hezbollah though, because
4
this story
minutes
has
of
really
introduction.
captured the popular imagination outside of the geopolitical context. It's literally like out of a Bourne movie. Not of the details, the decision to do this. I mean, there's literal like a major death toll, geopolitical consequences from the United States, Israel, and Lebanon, a potential broader war. So we have some video that we can share, people. But I mean, this is crazy stuff.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and put these new scenes of chaos. So on Tuesday, Counterpoints covered that Hezbollah pagers and some other devices that were not owned by Hezbollah exploded with creating mass chaos. I mean, you're talking about people who were at the market. Here you can see these are new images, walkie-talkies that exploded, and even things like this is a keypad entryway to get into a building that exploded. This is a picture of one of the devices, presumably after, it was blown apart. And it was sheer terror. You had people who were in markets going about their
Exactly. Like what else can you call this but terrorism?
and then suddenly somewhere an explosion happens, people are panicking, you had innocent bystanders, you had children who were killed. So, some factions are calling this, this highly targeted attack, but in fact, it's the polar opposite of that. You had people who were at home with their families, out on their motorbikes, like I said, in a market when these things blew up, and whoever happened to be around was hit and was injured. So you now have thousands of injuries. You have somewhere around a dozen deaths, 4 of them children, by the way. So like I said, I don't think there's any way to describe it other than terror. It's quite clear Israel hasn't officially taken credit for it, but quite clear that it was Israel behind these attacks. And we can also show you some of the evidence of how this all went down and how they were able to penetrate the supply chain in this manner. But in addition, here's Bibi Netanyahu thinking he's really cool and positioning himself as a new James Bond. Let's take a listen.
נתניהו, ראית שמשווים אותך לג'יימס בונד? מה פתאום ג'יימס בונד? נתניהו, בנימין נתניהו.
So let's go ahead and put up the...
I could have gone the rest of my life without ever fucking seeing that. Oh my lord.
Wall Street Journal article that we have here that has some of the new details. Again, we had attacks on subsequent days. Tuesday was the pagers. Wednesdays was by and large walkie-talkies. The headline here is Hezbollah walkie-talkies blow up across Lebanon in second wave of attacks. Those walkie-talkies used by the group, they said, blew up in homes, cars, and in operatives' hands across the country. People familiar with the matter said just a day after thousands of pagers carried by Hezbollah members exploded at roughly the same time. The new attack killed 20 people, injured more than 450 after Tuesday's bombings killed 12 and injured more than 2,800 people. That's according to Lebanon's government, which blamed Israel, which is reasonable. There was a quote here from Yoav Gallant in terms of the broader geopolitical implications, because we've been covering here, in fact, Monday morning when Tuesday morning when this was all unfolding and we were getting the initial images, we were covering the fact that Bibi Netanyahu very much wants to expand the official war into Lebanon. Now, there's already been tit-for-tat exchanges between Hezbollah and Israel. That's not new. What he's talking about is a much more significant escalation, something that theoretically, at least, the U.S. Opposes. You have Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, who's kind of on the outs in the Netanyahu administration because he was more in favor of securing some sort of a ceasefire hostage deal. But he told the Wall Street Journal, the center of gravity is shifting to the north. This means that we are moving forces, resources, and energy to the north. I estimate that we are at the start of a new phase in this war. So any hope of, one thing that would end the Hezbollah attacks right away is if you had some sort of a lasting ceasefire deal, an exchange of hostages. I think any hope of that is off the table, as long as, it's very clear the U.S. doesn't want to use their leverage to force any sort of a result on the Israelis. It's very clear Bibi Netanyahu wants to not only continue the assault that he has already been taking in, but he wants to expand into this new war as well. And, no end in sight, basically, Sagar.
There's so much to say, not only about the covert details, the attack itself, we'll get to that in terms of how it exactly folded out, showing how sophisticated Israeli intelligence is, but there's also a big why question, like why now? There's a couple of different stories out there. One is that this could be the precursor to some sort of larger attack. Two is that it actually means a larger attack's not going to happen. There was a third explanation I saw floated that Hezbollah had actually realized that there was something wrong with their pagers.
Yeah.
And that once they got intelligence that they might lose their ability to detonate these, they're like, well, we might as well just do it right now, whenever we have the ability. So all of those seem actually quite plausible. I'm not really sure. I did read that in Israel, there is a lot of mounting pressure on Netanyahu to actually either sign a ceasefire deal or enable some ability for those tens of thousands of people in the north of Israel sharing a border with Lebanon to be able to return home. That actually could be a part of the impetus as well, to try and satisfy the domestic. I mean, people are pissed. They haven't been able to live home in over a year. So that could be part of it. But yeah, I mean, when you pair that with the calculus, I mean, it's extraordinarily brazen, right? I mean, over 1,000 of them seem to have exploded. Multiple people were killed. Multiple bystanders were hit. I mean, the videos that we showed and they showed previously yesterday, literal grocery stores and everywhere, they basically didn't really care about any potential collateral damage, and they sent that page immediately. I mean, it's one of the most brazen intelligence operations and assassination, things that has played out in history. I also think it's a really good reminder. Modern war is not glorious. It's not like a movie or Call of Duty. Watch videos coming out of Ukraine. You have guys who are Russian and Ukrainians napping in a hole, and they look up and they see a drone who drops a grenade on them, and then they literally blow up into smithereens.
Yeah.
Or here, and like this. This is what actual technological warfare looks like. It's bad. Like being able to watch people get their limbs blown off. I don't recommend it, but I have watched now several of these videos, and this is what it actually looks like. This is what you actually want to stop from happening generally.
The reaction to it has been really just dark, in my opinion. Like the level of dehumanization of, I guess, any Arab population at this point is really quite astonishing. And think about, use the Russia-Ukraine
Welcome in, Nomad. Good to see
Imagine
you.
Russia partnered with China, which, they're allies.
Which they have.
And we're able to similarly, infiltrate the Ukrainian supply chain. And we're able to, blow up thousands of pagers, walkie-talkies, cell phones, whatever, electronic devices. indiscriminately across Ukraine with a significant toll on children killed, random people just happen to be nearby, family members, etc. Imagine the way that would be discussed. People would see clearly, like, this is horrifying. This is indiscriminate. This is a terror attack. That would be discussed in a very clear way. Here, not only is it not discussed that way, overwhelmingly, there are a few exceptions out there, but it's discussed as like, wow, how cool and amazing, and LOL, look what happened to them, etc. And, it's just really disturbing the way that people are able to put their humanity to the side, put the humanity of this, entire nation of people to the side, entire region of people to the side, just based on the U.S. propaganda that they're fed. So, I mean, that's part of what's really dark here. Sagar, you're alluding to as well, like, once you open these doors, they don't close again. Like, this is the new reality, is that this could be a weapon in anyone's hands.
Well, it's
like,
that's scary. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on too, is, how many years have we been talking about here on this show? We don't make anything. This entire phone is made outside of the United States, the chip inside of it. Do you really know? I mean, as far as I know, you can't even take the back off of your iPhone. You have no idea what's in this
inside.
phone.
That's right.
You don't know what's inside. I don't even know what's in any of these cameras. And how many of us buy new electronics on a day-to-day basis? So this is a very good glimpse into it. Look, it could be used against us. It could be used against anybody. And the details of how this all went down actually shows how, frankly, easy it was for the Israelis. This isn't just because they're Lebanese. Obviously, the Israelis wanted to do it to Hezbollah. This could happen here instantaneously if anybody wanted to. And also, Israel is a small country. Yes, they're technologically advanced, but the actual details of the plot, they're not that difficult.
They're pretty basic.
That's actually kind of what's astounding.
Please subscribe.
Why don't we get into that? We can put that on the screen, please.
Let's go ahead and put this Financial Times article, and these details have actually been confirmed and furthered by the New York Times. So, immediately people, once the pagers blow up, are like, where the hell did these pagers come from? Like, how did this happen? How were the Israelis able to penetrate the supply chain in this way? They say here, Hezbollah's preliminary investigation, according to one of its officials, alleges Israel spies somehow hijacked a delivery of pagers to Lebanon, packed them with tiny load of explosives and components, and then detonated them almost simultaneously. They traced it back to this sort of shell company called BAC Consulting. According to Hungarian company records, it was just set up in May of 2022 by this woman you see on your screen. She's apparently the sole director of the company. She did not reply to calls and messages seeking her comment. Her LinkedIn profile lists a PhD from UCL in particle physics among her qualifications, as well as stints at other elite UK institutions like the London School of Economics. One person who met her in recent years described her as an academic. So immediately there were a lot of questions about why this lady is selling Taiwanese pagers to Lebanese buyers. And like I said, the New York Times was basically able to confirm, like, oh, these are this BAC Consulting led by this woman who, very likely or very clearly has Israeli ties. They're the ones who inserted the explosives before selling these pagers to Hezbollah. They went and tried to find her office building. It's empty. Went and tried to find her apartment. It's empty, but has like a complicated multi-lock on the door. The people who were neighbors said, oh, we haven't seen her here forever. So anyway, this appears to have been the way they were able to effectuate this plot. And, the irony here is that Hezbollah knew that they needed to ditch their smartphones and their cell phones because they were worried they knew about Israeli innovation. We've even covered here, what is it called, Pegasus, the advanced hacking tools that they have where you're able to basically get access to any phone that you have the phone number for and be able to see what's going on.
You don't even need to send them a text message, nothing. Pegasus 1, you needed to send something like a compromised message. Pegasus 2, if they want it, you're done.
If they can get your phone number, then that's it. They can get access to your phone. So they knew that. They've been tracking that as well. And so there was a big push of all right, we got to get rid of all the cell phones. We got to go to this more sort of terrestrial, outdated tech, the low tech, that will be more difficult for the Israelis to be able to track and be able to penetrate to keep our communications and our location networks secure. And, once they made that move, that's exactly how Israel was able to jump in. As you said, Sagar, there was some reporting that the reason this happened now was because somebody in Hezbollah had figured out this was going on, and Israel was able to assassinate that individual. This is all, not fully confirmed.
Right.
There's, as you said, there's a lot of different stories about what might have happened or why now. But Israel assassinates that person to prevent them from, telling the chain of command what the hell's going on. But they realized, the gig was kind of up. The other thing, though, I think that makes sense is we've seen anytime that Bibi is a little bit on the rocks domestically, politically, what does he do? He, assassinates a top Hezbollah commander in Beirut, or he assassinates Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, or he does some sort of, attacks an embassy in Syria. He does some sort of escalatory provocation that his domestic population absolutely loves, and takes the pressure off of him politically so that he can keep holding on to.
Yeah, Arnalda, it's scary to think about, what this could mean for all of us.
Power and keep doing exactly what he wants.
It could be the best explanation, right? And that's actually one that makes quite a lot of sense. That Bond video went quite viral in Israel. Makes sense. There's one of those where, look, we got to think about it, I guess, in their domestic terms. I mean, the problem is that in Lebanon, too, there could be a lot of chaos now in terms of what the fallout from this could be for Hezbollah and for any of their Iranian proxies. For them, can they really take this sitting down? I mean, you could see it both ways. One, you'd be terrified. You're like, wow, every element of our communications chain is totally compromised. We're going to get wiped, if we ever have to go to a war again. The other is, well, this is the thing about Hezbollah. Yeah, do they commit terrorist acts? Yes, but it's difficult to describe really in the West because it's a non-governmental, governmental institution. It's almost part of the Lebanese society and government at a basic level of schools, kind of like Hamas, in Gaza. So it's a lot like the Ba'ath Party in Iraq after our invasion. We were like, oh, we can't have any Ba'ath members. Or what about the teachers? What about people who run the electric companies? It's difficult to parse, the difference. That's also another thing about the operation. I think it would be one thing if they were all in a meeting and you exploded a meeting, right? That's certainly one area, but the way that they did it, people were in public. I don't really know. I don't know if it was a message or if it was just, we have to do this right now. Otherwise, we're not going to have any ability. But that's what's opened themselves up to a lot of criticism from its own allies, like the U.S. and others who, at least behind the scenes, were stunned that something like this happened. Inside the Middle East, it certainly has created a lot of tension. We're going to get to this. Flights have actually now been canceled to Israel. We can put that up right now if we want.
Yeah,
this
that's
A7. So multiple carriers have canceled their. They have canceled all flights to Israel amid Lebanon explanation. Lufthansa, so not Arab, Etihad Airways or whatever. I'm talking about Lufthansa, Air France, and multiple others that have canceled it. I mean, I guess out of fear that something's going to blow up on their plane, which is not, unfounded.
No,
I would
exactly.
say.
I mean, it's could have, right? I mean, if a Hezbollah person happened to be on one of these planes when the signal was sent, I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty reasonable.
Seems plausible, yeah.
Yeah, it seems pretty plausible. But I mean, again, if you think try to put yourself in the shoes of the Lebanese people. Imagine if you had U.S. service members who were at the market, at home with their family, with their kids, whatever, and their cell phone explodes with thousands of, people who were injured, many of whom were innocent bystanders, children who were killed, et cetera. You can imagine how we would view that. We would rightly view that as a terror attack. Put A4 up on the screen, just one of the details here of one of the young girls, a 9-year-old child, who was killed yesterday. Fatima was in the kitchen when the pager on the table began to beep. According to her aunt, she picked up the device to bring it to her dad and was holding it when it exploded, mangling her face, leaving the room covered in blood. Fatima was trying to take courses in English. Her aunt said she loved English, and this is one of the children who was killed in this attack. Matt Miller was asked a little bit about this in a State Department briefing, specifically if he supports the operations that target Hezbollah. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this exchange, which has to do with that, and also talks a little bit more broadly about legitimacy of targets.
In general, yes, of course we support operations to target Hezbollah militants who continue to launch terrorist attacks against
This fucking ghoul.
Civilians. Israel has a right to defend itself against terror. And a right to carry out legitimate attacks against terrorists, not civilians, but terrorists. So as a general proposition, yes, of course.
Okay, so let me take you back to the legitimacy of targets and so on. Yesterday, a group of settlers attacked a school.
What a fucking liar, dude. What a fucking Weasley little liar, dude.
Against terrorists, not civilians, but terrorists. So as a general proposition, yes, of course.
Okay, so let me take you back to the
terrorists according to whom?
The legitimacy of targets and so on. Yesterday, a group of settlers attacked
No,
a school.
Arnaldo, I wasn't muted. I was speechless.
They beat up the students, they broke their bones, they beat up the teachers and so on. Are they a legitimate target? Should they be a legitimate target by the same kind of definition that in which you have defined the other targets?
Are civilians who the settlers attacking legitimate targets? Absolutely not.
I am saying the settlers who have attacked the civilians.
The settlers should be.
Should the settlers be a legitimate target?
The settlers should be held accountable through law enforcement means.
I'm
Not
asking,
through,
but-
hold on, not through any type of extrajudicial process or military process. They should be held account by law enforcement, which is what we would say about any type of violent attacks on individuals. That the law enforcement ought to hold them accountable to the full extent of the law.
Although they do take the law into their own hand time and time again, very violently.
Absolutely, which is why we believe they should be held accountable. And as you've seen the United States make clear through our own actions, if and when Israel does not step up and hold people accountable, we will do so ourselves.
Interesting.
Yeah, we really hold people accountable. I've seen that.
One, I think, very reasonable take for those out there, a guy named John Robb, who I often look to. He says, the reasons the governments don't do this is it greenlights the booby trapping and sabotaging of civilian supply chains, electronics that explode devolve into contaminated food and or water. And that's actually, frankly, what scares me the most. And
yeah, Lainey, they love punishing the settlers by giving them guns and military cover. Yeah, they do that all the time. The fuck?
part of the reason why I really wanted to flag this of like, this is what modern war would look like. If you think about total war, almost every war of the 20th century, major conflict between nation states escalates into like a true do or die situation, especially if America were to ever get involved. Think about how compromised our supply chain is, how much we rely on exports. Even our own military often runs on stuff from afar. But then think about too, about the legitimacy of Target allegedly like here in America and like who would count for that. You and I could technically qualify like, oh, propagandists of the state, you know, depending on whose definition. If somebody was in here and they happen to be one of those people, which is certainly possible, any of the supply or the transit networks that we take whenever we come here to work, you could just see how this could very clearly go crazy. And that is actually probably what I'm most afraid of, is watching the Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, if you look at it, what do the Russians strike whenever they do missiles? It's not the civilian population. They're going after like energy centers and the power stations inside of Ukraine. With Hamas, Israel has mostly done that as well. But now with Hezbollah, you're giving, you know, these tainted pagers that have been exploited through some sort of supply chain. You're just blowing it up wherever you want. Same with these cheap, commercially available drones, which we're seeing all over the Russia-Ukraine war. A lot of them fall out of the sky and blow people up all the time. So this is what it's really going to look like. This is why war is a nightmare, and you should avoid it at all costs. And we're getting now 4K video of what it really looks like when you get your entire face blown off. Previously, you know, at best, it's a government censor, let some guy write about it 2 years later. Like now you're seeing it 4K IRL, and that's really scary, honestly.
No, it's Pandora's box. Like it really is. They really are opening Pandora's box with this. And so, you know, for all that we can put John Fetterman here up on the screen green A6 to finish the sound. You know, fools like him who celebrate these types of actions. I fully support efforts to target and neutralize any existential threat like Hezbollah, and think it could never happen to us. Like, have the arrogance to think that this could never be done to us or one of our allies or some population that he happens to care about. You know, you're a fool. You're an absolute fool. And what can we say about it if/when it does happen to some group that we care about? What will we have to say about it when we, you know, maybe behind the scenes we'll have another tough talk with Netanyahu or whatever, but there's no expectation that the US government is going to come out and condemn these indiscriminate attacks on, you know, this technology and infiltration of a civilian supply chain, et cetera. So very scary world that we're entering here.
Yeah, certainly. Hey, if you like that video.
But of course, we have been following.
I probably need to censor some of this. This looks pretty graphic.
As well. But of course, we have been following the developments out of Gaza as well, as we see that there have been continued strikes. There's been bombing on more residential buildings. This is early on Friday. Airstrikes hit actually a house in Gaza City. At least 6 Palestinians, including children, were killed. They were among the dead in this attack. Now, this was west of the Al-Nusayrat refugee camp. Israeli forces there bombing an apartment inside the camp. This resulted in the injuring of a disabled girl and her brother. Their father was also killed. Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud joins us live from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. First of all, tell us about this strike on a refugee camp, on the Al-Nusayrat refugee camp.
Yes, well, what's really going on right now is the Israeli military taking advantage of the distraction going on in Lebanon and all the eyes that has turned into the evolving events inside Lebanon, and taking advantage of that and carrying out more deadly attacks across the Gaza Strip, including the central area in the Nusayrat refugee camp. 2 separate attacks that targeted residential apartments and residential buildings. And what we're looking at is the same exact scenario that we're seeing that has been concerning for the past couple of months. Displaced families inside residential homes that they have taken as shelters to protect themselves and seeking safety for themselves, and their children are being targeted and deliberately killed inside these residential homes. An overnight attack of an apartment in one of the residential buildings in northern Al-Nusayrat refugee camp was targeted. The father of that family was killed right away, as well as members of the family were critically injured, including a disabled girl, who were all transferred to Al-Aqsa Hospital. One thing that we knew about, and we carried out a brief interview with one of the boys surviving, who did not know about the passing of his father. He did not know that his father was killed in the attack. It was not until we finished the interview, a family member came by and informed the little boy about his father's death of the attack. On a separate attack, 8 family members, the number has increased, went up from 6 people to 8 people, including women and children, from the attacks on a displaced family inside a residential home in western Al-Nusayrat camp. On separate attacks in Gaza City, the Israeli military, at the center part of Gaza City, a family was also targeted, where 3 people reported killed right at the spot when their apartments was hit, but at least one drone missiles that killed the 3 people inside this apartment.
Hani, we've also been reporting on quite an escalation and intensified cross-border attacks between Israel and Hezbollah. Has there been any impact on the situation in Gaza from this? What have you been seeing in the past couple of days there?
Well, one would imagine that the attacks in Lebanon or this front that just opened in southern Lebanon would have eased the situation across the Gaza Strip, but quite the contrary. The Israeli military is scaling up the attacks across the Gaza Strip, just again taking advantage of the distraction and the chaotic situations they're creating in the northern front, and taking advantage of that and carrying more deadly attacks across the Gaza Strip. Just from overnight attacks all the way to this hour, there's almost every city across the Gaza Strip had at least one artillery shells or had been the site of a major air strikes, whether it's at tent sites or residential homes or just destroying more residential buildings. Now, the fear here, a growing fear and concern among the displaced, the traumatized population, that the distraction in the northern front will lead into more surge in the attacks and more casualties already here in the central part and the southern part of the Strip, let alone the northern part of the Gaza Strip that had been forgotten for the past few months, where there's enforced starvation, dehydration, the fact that people are not allowed to go to their homes. And the fear right now is this situation might be prolonged for a longer time, and displaced families will have to stay where they're at for another year or so.
Hani, thank you. Hani Mahmoud reporting to us from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza.
Stop the genocide. I don't wanna write a record, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business as usual, stop the genocide. I don't wanna write a record, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business as usual, stop the genocide. I don't wanna write a record, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business. I don't wanna write a banger, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business as usual, stop the genocide. It's land back from Philippines to Palestine. It's time to uprise till we're all free. Fuck individualism, this is collectivism. No more consumerism, tune into global rhythms. We make the revolution irresistible. Leaning on each other, holding them accountable. They turning humans into robot cops. Slaves to empires, brains whitewashed. They put whiteness in religious laws. Gave them rights to enslave mass graves, land theft, prison jobs. Real loves and decolonization. Total liberation of our nation. Stop the killings and the occupation. Changing, using radical imagination. Together we're amazing. I write a record, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business as usual, stop the genocide. I don't wanna write a record, I wanna reflect the time. Stop business as usual.
Please set it, freedom, yes, we'll get it. Revolutionary message, genocide, don't let it pass. You want to die, yeah, ask me why.
Cheer 100. The Night Rider 100 cheered 100 bits.
Thank you.
But you cannot imitate our style in your face. Revolution illustrate, truth will disseminate. Land back from Peru to Palestine, killing people for some oil, land, and some gasoline. I'm talking revolution, this is not an average dream. When you fight against the system built on white supremacy, I don't wanna write a song, I want to reflect the times. Flood the industry with revolutionary minds. Colonizer forces, start the business enterprise. 35,000 killed, Palestinian genocide.
No more division, unite the fight for what's just. We are the people and it's time you hear us. Fuck your systems of suppression and negation. There's no justification. Mindset of a warrior mother.
Thanks for the bitty, AC.
Fuck your abuse of power. Time to stand and deliver from the sea to the river.
All cities are beautiful.
World leaders, it's all eyes on you. Show me the peace, show me the justice, show me a leader who's here to protect us. So do this Anubis land back, we're ready to go. It's time to reap what you sow. You can act like you don't know. Realize which lies are true though.
Who is who? Thanks, Night Rider.
My resistance is resilience, and my resistance sheer brilliance. But when the people lacking pigment ask, "What is this?" I tell them I'm the Mother Earth hating business. They see a risk in children that are indigenous, and to their loss across the land they show indifference. So it don't come as no surprise to me when they letting the babies bleed for the oil and the greed. Funded by the land of the free, we march and we plead. Defund, divest, detract is the people's decree. So we taking it to
They go by the name Thelonious Parker.
but we still don't speak. Press roll out on pause, it's a priority for all my people from Sudan, Congo to Haiti, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Tibetan, all my students too. South Africa making moves like how the Houthis.
They're actually the one that. Thank you. They're the one that put up this video, so you can subscribe to their YouTube through that link. They only have like 26 subscribers, so. Yay, 10 biddies. Thank you.
I do really want to talk about this murder of a Turkish American young woman, 26 years old, named Ayşenur Ece, and she was, again, much like Rachel Corrie was in the year 2003 when she was working with the International Solidarity Movement, which is an international organization that takes people to the West Bank, specifically in to effectively defend communities that have been facing either and both IDF violence or settler violence, to try to, get people to move, to make it intolerable for them to live in their villages. And Rachel Corrie was killed while standing in front of someone's home wearing a bright orange vest with a bullhorn, and she was crushed by a bulldozer that went to go demolish a home. And at the time, we all took the streets, and here we are, 20 years later, and here's another American activist who went with ISM to bear witness in the village of Beta. Beta has been under a lot of violence and settlers there.
Madcat, thank you for 10 biddies.
15 people had been killed in Beta prior to this event. But according to the Washington Post, did an incredible deep dive into what happened to her. And they spoke to 13 witnesses and reviewed 50 videos and photos. She was at this protest. She didn't want to get too close to the action.
Yes,
We've all done the protest there. We're like,
is.
I don't want to get arrested now. I'm gonna
And as far as I know, with graphic content, you are as the streamer, even if it's YouTube appropriate, there's still things that we are not supposed to show on Twitch, and the streamer is responsible for censoring the content. So I think censoring it with a blackout screen is good enough, I hope. But yeah, it sucks because it's not really our fault that the world is so fucked, but definitely get bonked just covering the news. Yeah. Hey, it's Lady Badash. Welcome in. Well, Knight Rider, you can multitask, can't you?
I don't want to, let's stay back. So she kept her distance from this nonviolent protest. Well, it turned out to be some rock throwing and whatnot. Of course, the IDF escalates it with tear gas. Her Australian colleague testified to say, or told the media that she was, away from the action. 20 minutes after basically the protest died down, she shot and killed. She was hiding by a tree. Again, trying to keep clear. She was shot and killed specifically. And there's more sort of details about, wait, hang on. There's more details from one of the colleagues, an Israeli activist named Jonathan Pollock.
These were two separate shots of live ammunition, shot one after the other. The first one hit a metal object, and then a young man from the village in his thigh. And then I heard another shot. And then I heard people calling my name in English, saying, we need help, come help us. I ran over there about 10 or 15 meters behind me, farther away from the soldiers, into the olive groves. I found her lying on the ground beside the tree, bleeding from her head. I put my hand under her head to try and stop the bleeding. I took her pulse. She had a very weak pulse. We called the ambulance. From there, we evacuated her to the village's medical center, where the doctor came into the ambulance and continued into the hospital, where they tried to resuscitate her, but failed.
So, again, she was from Seattle. She was born in Turkey, but she grew up in Seattle. She'd been an activist. She was young, again, 26, and she had gone to Standing Rock, as you do when you're an organizer and an activist. And she wanted to go to the West Bank, to bear witness to everything that had been happening. Since October 7th, 600 Palestinians in the West Bank have been killed. And then, again, more specifically about Beta, 15 Palestinians had been killed there. Last month, another American citizen who we haven't even talked about or had heard much about, Daniel Santiago, who was a 32-year-old teacher from New Jersey, was shot in the thigh by Israeli forces in the same olive grove where AG was killed. The IDF in Santiago said Santiago was accidentally injured when soldiers fired live rounds into the air to disperse protesters. They also claimed the same thing about Aishanur, that she was accidentally killed. But again, based on Jonathan's testimony and the WAPO investigation, that is not true at all. She was shot in the head. I mean, this is like, what a way to continue to galvanize an entire generation, Sarah, of young Americans who do not want to see our taxpayer dollars and any funds going to Israel. But, you know, again, like with Rachel, like with Aishanur, it's like it repeats itself. Yeah, I guess I just wanted your thoughts to weigh in on this insanity.
Yeah. You know, the level of passive voice that the Biden administration uses when talking about Israel's killing of Aishanur is deeply offensive. Her family has called them out repeatedly. They have not been contacted by the Biden administration. You know, multiple witnesses say that they have not been contacted by Israel's supposed quote unquote self-investigation. Her family wants an independent investigation. That's absolutely falling on deaf ears. And there's even been some really gross sort of depictions of her, like making it seem like she wasn't a real American or wasn't a legitimate American, whatever that means. There was a New York Times article describing her funeral, and it said, you know, there wasn't an American flag in sight. There were Turkish flags, but not American flags. And it's like, funny that they don't want to like fly the flag of the state that may have provided the munition that killed her, and that is not even reaching out to them in the most bare minimum way. But, you know, I think this also just draws on a deeper point, which is, you know, she has not gotten enough attention, but she definitely got more than not that it's a competition. Every single human life snuffed out deserves to be remembered, deserves to be honored. So it's not a competition, but it's just to say this, you know, what Israel is doing with US participation has resulted in a staggering amount of deaths that we don't even totally know the final count. One study in the British medical journal, The Lancet, said that when you include indirect killings, the number could be as high as 186,000. We just really don't know. Official death counts are over 40,000 at this point, but we all know that those are like honestly skew conservative because there are deaths from famine, disease. There are bodies that still have not been retrieved from the rubble of buildings.
They're also so meticulously, like the Gaza Health Ministry, for all the naysaying that Biden participated in, that every single person counted is like identified by a loved one, and like most of their body parts are there. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, the Lancet study was like given like the body parts that are cannot be identified, to say nothing of what you just said, the people trapped under the rubble. It's like, it's just amazing how much we have dehumanized and discredited Palestinians and any kind of Palestinian, you know, official, to the point where it's like, oh no, there's a reason that the body count has stayed the same. It's because they are meticulous, and also they're running on no resources. Whatever. I don't have to, you know, keep going, but I do want to say, like, it's not just, you know, Aishanur, but I want to mention, and we didn't talk about this, but about a week ago, a man named Matt Nelson in the Boston area self-immolated over Palestine as well, following Aaron Bushnell, and I believe an unidentified woman outside of the Atlanta area who also these are 3 self-immolations over Palestine. So again, this is a huge issue to Americans. It is not normal to be ingesting this amount of death and knowing that despite everything you're doing, somehow the government, it falls on deaf ears. And to your point, you know, they did have this statement. Biden eventually came out with a statement saying that AG's death was unacceptable, and added that Israel's preliminary investigation has indicated it was a result of a tragic error, yes, resulting from an unnecessary escalation. And then Anthony Blinken, again, with his, you know, like empty ass words, is asking for security forces to, quote, make fundamental changes in the way they operate in the West Bank. I mean, it's so egregious. And when you compare the Democrats and Republicans on this issue, Sarah, it does feel like there is little daylight. I guess the only thing I could say is Democrats give us maybe slightly more time. And I mean that in a way that, like, Donald Trump is very keen on supporting the full annexation of the West Bank as per, you know, Sheldon Adelson's widow's wishes. But I do agree that this sort of like slow death, quick death that people talk about when it comes to Democrats or Republicans, that's absolutely apt in the issue of Palestine. But the allowing for more time for us to stop this death, I think is an advantage. A shitty one, but a small one. And I know that not everyone agrees with me. I know that's not like, you know, a lot of folks listening, you know, don't agree, but that's where I'm at.
You know, it's a hard one. I will say that it's really unfortunate that Biden was the person who was president when this happened. Biden, his lifelong career, if you could identify one consistent thread, probably being extremely pro-Israel, is that. I mean, you know, he was like defending Israel, breaking people's bones intentionally during the Intifada. He was calling in the late 90s for the U.S. to move its embassy to Jerusalem. He supported Trump's, you know, he said he wasn't going to reverse Trump's moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. You know, I think unfortunately on this issue, I mean,
no one's more Zionist than Biden. Like,
yeah, like on this issue, it's hard to even use words like worst case scenario, but what we're in now is a very, very bad scenario. And like for we are seeing huge movements and huge opposition. And for, you know, Harris serves in the administration, like, you know, you hear people say like, oh, well, she can't break from a president who she's serving under. He's still sort of her boss. And it's like, no, that's just a thing you made up. Like, you know, we're taught that genocide is the crime of crimes. You know, you learn that. You learn words like never again. And now you have, you know, scholars, experts saying this qualifies as a genocide. You have the ICJ saying that it's plausible genocide happening. And so for there to be sort of, for like decorum, professional decorum to sort of win the day in the face of what's happening is really unfortunate. So, you know,
I think that's a really good point. And I think the other thing is, like, we all thought that given that she has a campaign, like if there was one moment where you could distinguish yourself from the person you're serving under, it's when you're campaigning. I mean, she distinguishes herself, like I said, every day during the debate. You know, she barely invoked Biden's name. She was like running from the Biden, you know, legacy. And there's some good stuff that Biden's done. This is the biggest.
She
part of
literally
his
said,
legacy,
"I'm
and
not
it is
Joe
a massive
Biden."
stain. But like, it is just so painful to me. I'm like, I think it is fear. I don't think it's decorum. I think she's fucking afraid. I mean, she is afraid of the Israeli lobby. She's afraid. And I also don't think, though, that if
Howard
elected,
Kamala.
this changes. This is a massive, there is massive amounts of pressure. And I'm glad. I don't know. For me, I think Palestine and Israel should be a litmus test for every Democrat moving forward. If this year has taught us nothing, it is that, because it is the key to not just our own safety and stability, but that of the Middle East and so many of our communities and loved ones. And this gets into World War III territory. Like, good, you should have an answer to, like, I don't know, even if it's a two-state solution, something I don't agree with or don't think is be possible, at least you have to say it. At least it should be like part of the discussion, and for sure, like Sarah, you and I, like coming from the anti-Iraq war, anti-Afghanistan war movements, like this anti-war movement really does stand on the shoulders of those and builds a true anti-war bloc that I hope can really wield power in the future.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, Palestinian freedom, Palestinian organizing has always been present in U.S. anti-war movements, but now it is the anchor and the center. And people, Palestine has been marginalized for a really long time, including within social movements. So to see it take the center, I think that is really powerful. It's horrific that had to happen because something so horrifying is taking place. But I do think that there are like really big movement questions about, like, okay, well, what does that mean for the future? How do we hold on to this? How do we build from this?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are grappling with that. I have to be honest, like there are big strategic questions right now that I don't even feel prepared to answer. I think it's a hard moment, and there are big debates happening. Questions about like how to use the election as leverage for ending the onslaught. Is that possible? To what extent is that possible? If it's not possible, what do we do? I mean, it's just a really hard moment. And I just want to be open about the fact that I don't know that I necessarily have the answers, but there are a lot of smart people working really hard on this at a time of unbearably high stakes, like people hashing out these questions, like while their literal family members are, under attack.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll leave it at this. I mean, here's my thought. I'm not an expert, but I will say that, potentially Kamala Harris jumping into the race and being the nominee, is not as much of a leverage point, considering she may not need the particular communities, the Arab and Muslim communities in the swing states to win. She may not need them because of, she's polling really well. She's up many points. However, if she loses, and we've all known this, it is because of low turnout among people of color, among Arab American voters, among people who have been demanding a change on this. And there's no one who relishes in a Kamala Harris loss, least of all me. But we know what it would be over. And, again, it's a general election. She's tacking to the center. She's doing what every fucking Democrat in a general does and says, I don't really need the people of color, the youth vote. I got Taylor Swift, whatever. And it's like, okay, I hope this works. I do hope this works. I do hope people, I do think there should be mobilizing happening. But my God, like that's a huge, I don't know. It's also like our power has yet, Sarah, to grow to the point where we can, I think, leverage it in the way that we should. And it's a moral power. It's not, crazy leftists, holding out on their pet issue. It's much bigger than that.
And the one thing that's frustrating is that when Democrats lose, they always draw the wrong lessons. They're always like, oh, we should have tacked further right, and that's why we lost.
Exactly. We said abortion too much.
I was just thinking, you were talking about like Harris's fear and sort of concern, but there's another possibility, which is she just genuinely believes it. At the last debate, one of the things I noticed is that she only really became animated and really excited when she was talking about war. Or to put it differently, that was when she was at her most animated and, like, frankly, seemed the most, like, you saw her convictions come through. And so, I think that there's this, like, possibility that lawmakers are taking these positions because they have an ideological commitment. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to push them. Absolutely. Like we live in the US, it's our government sending the weapons. We absolutely need to push. And these same people will also, that doesn't mean that they won't, that there's no point in trying to get them to buckle to pressure. But unfortunately, with Biden, it's absolutely the case. That he has an ideological commitment.
100%. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now.
Do it. But I know most of you already are subscribed to Frantifa, Francesca Fiorentini. We love her. She was just interviewing Laverne Cox. Can you believe it? So amazing. I cannot wait to check that out. Okay. Up next, I need to hydrate. Up next, we have an interview with Frank Barat interviewing Rachel Corrie's parents. So I thought that would be interesting to follow this up, talking about the killing or the murder of Aisha Noor Aggie. And how they resonate with this current loss.
Good morning, Cindy. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
Hello.
It's really lovely to see you. As I was saying just before, the last time I saw you was, I think, in 2011 for the Russell Tribunal in Palestine in New York. So it's been quite a while. But yeah, it's really lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Frank. It's good to see you again.
I love seeing you again and talking to you, but unfortunately, it's I guess not for the right reasons. Gaza is being genocided as we speak. It's been nearly a year now, and like last week, a few days ago, Aisha Noor Aggie was killed by an Israeli soldier, and unfortunately, I guess it brings you back to what happened to Rachel in 2003, and it brings, I guess, Jocelyn Herndl back to what happened to Tom Herndl also in 2003, and it reminds us that it looks like no one is safe right now. I mean, no one who wants to take a stand for justice and equality for the Palestinians is safe. I was wondering if it's okay with you, if we can go back. What was Rachel doing in Gaza, and why did she want to go? I don't want to talk about this for too long, but I would just want to give people a bit of context. So yeah, what was she doing in Gaza, and why did she want to go?
Like Aishinur, Rachel was a student, at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. She had completed her education, was getting ready to graduate. She had become very involved in the anti-war movement as the U.S. approached war with Iraq, also with Afghanistan earlier. But the community had new peace organizations forming when the U.S. response to 9/11 had been war. And so there were Olympians for Peace in the Middle East, OMJP, and old organizations like FOR, where people became very active. And that was at a critical time in her education. She connected with those community groups. And then friends of hers went to what was called Freedom Summer, the first summer that there was a call from Palestinians and from internationals who were supporting them to bring activists to Palestine, to the West Bank, to Gaza, to stand with Palestinians who wanted to resist what was happening at that time and to do it nonviolently. And some of her friends went in the summer of 2002. She followed that very closely. She worked with them when they returned. She was studying Arabic, and she felt that what was happening in the West Bank and Gaza inside Israel at that time was connected to everything else that was happening in the region, and that had possibly even been a reason for why 9/11 happened in the United States, one of the reasons. And so there were people on campus who had spent a lot of time in the West Bank, faculty members. She connected with a lot of people to learn all she could, and then determined that she could also go and participate with the International Solidarity Movement, ISM, Palestinian-led movement. At the time, what I remember is there were only two requirements for being a part of ISM, and that was that you believed in freedom for the Palestinian people, and that you agreed to engage only in nonviolent resistance. So that's what drew her. I think, like many young people, Rachel was looking for meaningful things to do with her life. And things changed very dramatically for students, I think, during that period, as it has for students now, across the world, but also across the U.S., as they've watched the terrible situation develop for this past year in Gaza.
I'd only add to that
Thank you, Cindy.
The U.S. State Department at the time listed Rachel as a human rights observer. It's my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, but that there are other additional protections for human rights observers. Certainly what we know about Aishinur, she was way behind the group looking on. She was a human rights observer as well. So there's that connection of being there to observe, to try to, if they can't keep the violence against the Palestinians down, then at least report it to the world so the world hears about it.
By the way, Craig and Cindy, I don't know if like your video quality, like if you see me clearly and stuff, but if you don't sometimes, it's not a problem. The video at the end will be like perfect. I just wanted you to be aware of that. So don't worry about it. And I'll cut this obviously from the interview. I wanted to ask you also,
You
like
didn't cut that.
when
That's
Rachel
funny.
told you she wanted to go, how did you feel at the time?
she was very careful about it. She had a conversation with me this summer before she went, and I started looking for other things that she might do. You know, it was an issue that our family, of course, had known about for forever. It was always there, but it wasn't one that we were tied to directly in any way. And I had so much to learn, and we have family members from India, and so I started Googling, you know, looking. I don't know if we Googled then or if we had some other means, but I was using my computer. We were living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time because of a job change. Rachel was in Olympia, Washington, but I was looking for places that she could go and do things that would satisfy her needs, meet her needs for meaningful work in the world. But also where she could be assisted by extended family or connections that we had, where I felt that she might be safer. What I didn't realize is not being in Olympia at the time, just how integrated into the movement there, the peace movement there, and into all of those actions I described earlier that were happening locally to try to stop the war with Iraq. And then having these close friends who had come back from the International Solidarity Movement. So there was certainly anxiety and on our part, but she was, 23 years old, going on 24 at the time. We always felt, our kids needed to find their own paths forward, and our role was to try to understand and to support that. And she clearly had. And I would say that we remember both of us the first phone call that we got from Rachel from Gaza, which was, I believe, from the home that she stood in front of, the Nasrallah home, and people wanting her to be in touch with her parents, Palestinians wanting her to be in touch with her family. And I could hear trembling in her voice. She said, "Can you hear that? Can you hear that?" And Craig could describe it better than I, but you could hear the shelling coming. It was during the night, towards these homes that were still remaining. Already many homes had been destroyed, but these homes that were still remaining along the border with Egypt, actually, along the Philadelphia corridor. And I remember that when we got off the phone, Craig and I didn't say a word to each other. I was fearful. But then as we got more news about what she was doing, we grew more comfortable. And clearly she was understanding better what was happening there and what she needed to do. So, I would say that there was sort of a false security. And then as we got closer to March of that year, into March, she started talking about coming home in her emails to us. And so that's what we were focused upon.
I mean, since Rachel's death, you've been working non-stop, in a fight for justice and accountability. I'm sure one of the reasons you've been working so much for Rachel in a way to get some kind of justice is to avoid other, I guess, internationals, because unfortunately Palestinians die every minute nowadays. But so to avoid for any other internationals to face the same fate as Rachel. So how did you feel when you heard about Aishenur's death a few days ago?
I think it was devastating to hear about Aishenur's killing, because it takes us back. We knew what that family would face. That pain is searing. It's different for each individual, even within a family, but it's also the same. So we knew what they'd be going through simply from the loss. And then you have it in an international situation. It's a very specific kind of hell that in the worst day of your life, it's also the most public day of your life. So our hearts went out to them, but also, as you maybe suggest a little bit, anger first at the Israelis, that they're continuing to kill people. And then also anger as you start to hear the U.S. State Department with the same platitudes that we've heard over and over again as U.S. citizens are killed. That some of that speech has changed for the better. And so I'm hopeful that the U.S. government will do more now than they have before. I think if you talk to each individual in our family, that we have sort of different things that we're saying about what we did in the last 20 years. I've felt from the beginning that you had to talk about finding justice for Rachel, but Rachel was dead. There's no finding justice for Rachel. So I felt like we were working to keep the other, like you said, the other internationals from being killed, and they kept being killed, and the reaction of the U.S. government kept being the same. So that pain continues, but also the Palestinians. You can't work on this issue. You can't work on somebody else's issue for 2 decades. It has to become your own. So when we first went to Gaza and met the people that Rachel introduced us to by email, they were already old friends in some sense. I remember when Rachel was killed, wanting to tell the Palestinians in Gaza, in Rafah, thank you, which is a strange sort of thing. But when we could not be parents to Rachel, it was clear that these Palestinian families were parents to Rachel. They loved her and would, even if they had to pantomime, they would communicate with her that love and try to take care of her. There's just an amazing international community in our world that is caring and loving, and it's also so disappointing that so many people they fear the other rather than embrace them, because it's a wonderful world when you embrace the other.
I would just add that, Craig and I are at this moment 76 and 77 years old. And we've been trying for a couple of years to figure out how do we wind down some of the work. And I remember, on October 7th, knowing immediately that we were going to be facing another long, terrible stretch. Had no idea that we'd still be talking about what was happening in Gaza continuing a year later, and would have seen the unbelievable horror that is Gaza right now. But again, there are these moments, and Aishinur, the news when it came to us on Friday morning of Aishinur's killing was another one of those moments where, no, there isn't ability to just sit back and stop. I mean, there's another family that's facing this. At the same time, we're hearing all year long, I've been hearing reports from other families that we know in Gaza who have lost multiple family members. So it's a very difficult moment that we're all in, and I think that we just have to hope and pray that that we've seen some of the worst of it, and that the world is waking up, and that there will be changes. And as Craig said, a lot of our focus is trying to support Aishinur's family when they've asked for that support, and the people that are supporting them in thinking about what do we want from the U.S. government? What do we want from the Israeli government? And certainly listening to what the family says they need and want, but also looking at the history of how these kinds of killings of American citizens and of many others, what the responses have been, and trying to see if we can move the dial on all of that is very important to us.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about this because the State Department's response to any killings, it seems, even of Americans, but also of Palestinians, is we're trusting our partners in Israel to conduct a thorough investigation about this. And then they wait for months and months and months, and nothing happens. We've heard that from Aishinor's family that no one called them from the US government, the US State Department. And I remember actually when Rachel died that the US and Israel said that Israel were going to change their rules of engagement when it came to demonstrations. And we see now more than 20 years later that nothing has changed. I was wondering, like, what's your, in a way, what happened in terms of accountability for Rachel, if anything, and who do you hold in a way responsible for Rachel's death and Aishinor's death?
Well, of course, we pursued what the world would see as justice for Rachel in a number of different ways. And as you point out, the most logical way was through international diplomacy. But I do remember being in the State Department and talking to Colin Powell's Chief of Staff, Lawrence B. Wilkerson, a few months after Rachel was killed. And they are telling us that from the President of the United States talking to Prime Minister Sharon at the time and being promised a, quote, thorough, credible, and transparent investigation, end quote, into Rachel's killing with the results to be told to the U.S. government. But beyond that, various people at very high levels of our government communicating to their counterparts. But also, the United States at the same time had sent another extra $1 billion to Israel. So I asked Larry Wilkerson, I said, which do you think they hear? Your letters or the $1 billion? Because I got a hunch they hear the $1 billion and they don't. You can write all the letters you want to, but if we send more aid after killing a U.S. citizen, that's all they pay attention to. I think that's proved true over the following decades. And so the only way to get any sort of accountability here is to cut off aid, which is required by U.S. law. So all we have to do is obey our own laws and be rational about this sort of thing. And I think things would change. And they have to change for the Palestinians as well. I remember we were involved very early in going to Congress. And we were being helped by a group in the United States. And we were told by their young person that was helping us that we could talk in Congress about the cause of Rachel, but we could not speak about Rachel's cause. In other words, we could talk about a U.S. citizen being killed by the Israeli military, but not so much about why she was there. That wasn't completely true, but we learned pretty quickly that what we had to do is introduce ourselves talking about Rachel being killed. And I think that some of that's changing from what I hear, and certainly the response of our senators, which are Aishinor's senators and Aishinor's congressmen, who worked, all those people worked with us over the 20 years on this issue. Their response is immediate and not trusting Israelis, trusting the eyewitnesses that were there and the reports that are coming out, which are consistent if you don't listen to the Israeli military. And they want answers. And of course, they're putting that in writing to the State Department, and the State Department is required to at least answer their questions. So I'm hopeful that there can be some change, and I'm hopeful that people will drive that far enough so that there is actually consequences to the Israeli government. And the only one I can think of is to stop our military support with munitions and equipment and money going on, and also stopping our protection in the UN and other international bodies. Because this needs to be dealt with on an international level, and the United States needs to get on with that along with other countries.
I know in the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield has stated that the U.S. is outraged about Aysenur's killing. And it didn't start that way in the first hours, but since she's been killed, the language has changed and become stronger on the part of Secretary of State Blinken, I think on the part of even President Biden at this point. So we're hopeful that the message is getting through, but we had a lot of support from the same people, from people in the State Department, from others in government through the years. And when you asked about what happened in Rachel's case in terms of accountability, after 2 years, we were told by the State Department, Chief of Staff to Colin Powell, that he could say without equivocation that there had not been a thorough, credible, and transparent investigation in Rachel's case. At that point, we were faced with statutes of limitations. We had also been told that by Mr. Wilkerson, who was very helpful to us through the years, if it were his daughter, he would sue them at that point. And so we did, pursue legal action, and we spent many years at the Israeli system, legal system is very different from what happens here in the US. So it was many years, and there were efforts on the part of the Israeli government to stop those kinds of lawsuits. So it took a very long time. And of course, the courts found on behalf of the state completely, and showed us through that entire process that even the Israeli courts are implicated in the occupation, are complicit in the occupation and what's happening there. But what it did allow us opportunities to gather much more information and to hear directly from soldiers. But the whole in that kind of legal effort, the state is doing everything it can to defend itself, the state of Israel, not searching for the truth, which is what Craig and I hoped for. So we gathered a lot of info, but there was never accountability. There was never a thorough, credible, transparent investigation. It's a position of the U.S. government that was confirmed by Tony Blinken, now Secretary of State Blinken. That was confirmed in a meeting that we had with him in 2010 in Jerusalem, and that's never changed. So, and we received incredible messages. A letter from an official at the State Department, Michelle Bernier-Toth, who wrote in 2008 and talked about all of the high-level American officials who had approached their counterparts in Israel about Rachel's case with questions and questions about investigation. And she said, our questions and requests go unanswered or ignored by Israel. And so there were these efforts all along the way, and we're grateful for those, but the follow-through never happened. There were never consequences. And even when we brought our legal case, that was not against an individual Israeli soldier. It was against the Israeli military and the Israeli government. And that's really what we need to see change, is we need to see those institutions impacted by actions on the part of our own government.
I think the last time we actually were in the State Department was in 2015. We were talking to then Deputy Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. And I remember towards when we were leaving, I thanked him. I said, I'm glad you're caring. I'm glad you're a decent person. I'm glad you're caring about our family. But unless you engage your institution, unless you bring the full power of the State Department to bear, you don't do me any good. It doesn't help. It's nice, but it doesn't help. I hope that, I'm sure he doesn't remember those words, but I hope he thinks about that feeling.
Cindy, Craig, thank you really from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to talk to me. I also have the feeling that Israel killing Palestinians, unfortunately, they've been so dehumanized over the years that you feel like the Western media is not really, doesn't really care about them. But I also think Israel is trying to send a message by killing Rachel, Tom, Aishinur now, by killing also a U.S. citizen on the Mavi Marmara, the boat of the flotilla. Israel is trying to send a message to, people fighting for justice. Don't come. You are at risk. You are also at risk. And but I think the solidarity movement is very powerful and is so beautiful that hopefully it'll bring justice to the Palestinians one day or another. So thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Craig.
Thank you for having us. I'm reacting to what you said because of the list of people that you have there, and there are more. Shireen Abu Akleh jumps to mind, but Rachel was the first, and the lack of a strong statement in Rachel's case, I think, allowed those others to be killed. So when people thought we were fighting for justice for Rachel, we were fighting for justice for all those other people, but we didn't know their names yet. And now who are we fighting for? We don't know their names, and certainly for the Palestinian people. I mean, that's at the end of the time, that's what we're trying to do is help these people to live.
And I would just add,
thank you both. Oh, sorry.
The people in the region. I mean, we have very close connections to comrades inside 48, inside Israel, who are also working for the same thing, even during these really difficult times there. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about that.
Beautiful.
Thank you to you both. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Kalik, and this is a special live episode of Dispatches. After 2 days of Israeli terrorist attacks on Lebanon that injured thousands across the country and killed more than 24, including children, Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah gave an address that accused Israel of crossing all lines. And then today, Israel bombed Beirut, flattening an entire apartment building. As we approach a year of genocide on Gaza and ongoing escalations on several other fronts, many are wondering how much longer this can go on without exploding into a regional apocalypse. To discuss the latest developments, I'm joined by Lebanese journalist Ghadi Francis. Ghadi, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Rania. We miss you in Lebanon, and thank you for acing the pronunciation in Arabic this time.
Well, I miss you too. I miss Lebanon, and it pains me to not be there right now as the situation is just horrific. Israel continues to escalate. So I guess a good place to start would be to talk about what just happened today, where it looks like Israel.
Welcome in, Loki Sapfoot. We get a shout out, please.
Bombed an apartment building in the southern suburb of Beirut, and there seem to be many casualties. So what were they doing? Why did they do this? And what's the outcome?
Well, the reports are still coming out, so not everything is now definite, and we still didn't see the official statement by Hezbollah. So usually the affirmed information comes from Hezbollah itself, not from the Israelis. But as per the Israelis, it was targeting a top commander and a top leader. But it was in a bustling street in the heart of Beirut, in the time when people are coming back from schools and families are coming back to their homes. So the casualties are naturally many. But regardless of that, Rania, I want to tell you something, and I know that you know that it is really how I live and how I feel, and it reflects the Lebanese spirit in general. You know that I'm not bluffing. We are very much subtle and contained in such situations. It comes to us naturally because this is not new to us. This war is not new to us. Our people are not new to us. It's just like you are living an experience as a person. It's a personal experience, and there are seasons. Now, as Lebanese people, this Dahi, this southern suburb of Beirut, and this organization and this community and this country has seen that firsthand, year in, year out, season in, season out, massacre in, massacre out, since 1948. So when you tell a Lebanese journalist that yes, they bombed Beirut today and they killed a top leader in Hezbollah, I say, how would a top leader in Hezbollah prefer to die? We're talking about someone who's obviously
Damn.
as per the information, Ibrahim Aqil is one of the wanted lists because he was in the actual operation and against the Marines in the 83. So he's on the same list, on the same album or list of the top wanted military and security leaders in Hezbollah. But I was just thinking to myself, if this man was one of the fighters or the leaders in 1983, which is like 40 years ago, we're talking about a 60-year-old leader. I want to tell you, Rania, and to tell everyone that would listen to us, those who really like Lebanon and love Lebanon, and those who are pro-Palestine and pro-life and anti-war crimes and anti-civilian technology becoming war bombs inside our homes and next to our children's beds. People who are pro-life like us, I want you to rest assured that the resistance that is actually carrying the fight, deterring the Israelis, hurting the baby killers, is not the 60-year-old leadership. Rest assured, the ones that are firing the missiles, activating the drones, getting the footage back intact to the headquarters, sending them to press, sending the hacked messages to every Israeli yesterday, the ones who are actually carrying on the technological warfare that was able to defeat your billion-dollar Iron Dome. These are not the 60-something-year-olds. I'm not saying that the 60-something-year-old leadership is not of essential wisdom and presence in such organizations. But I'm saying, I said that when Fuad Shukr was assassinated. I don't think the people who are actually in that meeting, if they are 1 or 3 Radwan leaders, are the only leaders in Hezbollah.
Sorry, I forgot to put the captions
And I
on.
don't
My
think
bad.
they would prefer any other way to be martyred. These are people whose ideology is way too deep, and they are numerous. I think if Netanyahu wants to eradicate Hamas, and it took him 1 year, and the list came out yesterday, he killed babies, elderly, women. Most of the deaths were not actual fighters, okay? So do you think that how much time would it take Netanyahu to defeat
Hi, Poo Poo
Hezbollah,
Sama.
who's recorded and reported to be around 100,000 fighters?
I mean, those are all very, very important points. It does seem as though the Israelis are
love you
really
too.
testing Hezbollah this week. I want to ask you about the horrific terrorist attacks that took place in the days prior to this recent bombing, because that was quite unprecedented. And I'm sure you saw the Western media coverage of that was to frame the booby-trapped exploding pagers and then walkie-talkies the following day as some sort of ingenuity of the Israelis. They're so smart. They're like James Bond. Look what they did. It's so precise. It's so strategic. It's so creative.
I'm doing okay.
And you're obviously in Lebanon.
Thank you for that.
And, you know, we all know people who were
I had
impacted
to
by
come
this.
on a
Go ahead.
panel yesterday. I had to come on a panel with a creature that said these while I was listening.
Oh,
Imagine.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
And he
that's really triggering.
actually unapologetically used the term, it so much looks like white colonizers blanket bombing something. He said something like that, and I lost it. My heart was racing. They are brutal enough, unapologetic enough, racist enough, crazy enough, terrorists enough to enjoy saying it. What are you talking about? Your kids have pagers and phones. What are you talking about? Are you really enjoying and celebrating turning every electronic device into a timed bomb in the hands of an apartheid regime? If they are not saying no to a creature like Netanyahu, will they say no to your government when they use that to kill you? Israel is a seller of crime. They are setting presets. What they are doing is not about Lebanon. It's not about Hezbollah. It's not about Palestine. It is about humanity, technology, utilizing technology in
It's both,
terror
Manuel.
attacks. And if they do it and the world says that's great, is the world saying that if something like Al-Qaeda uses that tomorrow, that would be superiority as well? What are you giving? Who are you giving ideas to? This world is open. This technology is open. The Israelis obviously are not the smartest people in the world. They're actually the idiotic people in the world because they're carrying on their own self-sabotage for the last year. They turned every human into their enemy by using that. This is not being smart. This is being dirty enough. It is not being some things only the dirty people do in life. It's not being smart if you make $1 million being in prostitution. This is not smartness. This is just simple choices in life. They choose to be war criminals and kill people using pagers simultaneously in the middle of the day with bystanders, civilians.
I disagree with that. I think making $1 million doing prostitution is incredibly smart.
All across the streets. You can see that children died. And you said countless people, these people who lost their eyes or their hands, they are not combatants for Hezbollah. I kid you not. They are not. They are just people who use that technology. The actual combatants are not there in the middle of the day carrying their beepers.
No, it's completely ridiculous. It was terrorism in the most obvious way, and it was very like ISIS style, Al Qaeda style, sort of attack. It was so dirty, and that's what the Israelis do. They play dirty. But Hassan Nasrallah gave a speech yesterday, and in it he said that this did not destroy their communications network. This did not destroy their command and control network, and he noted that this was an attempt to get Hezbollah to decouple its fight with Israel from the genocide in Gaza. And he reiterated, which he's been saying since October of last year, when this started, that the only way Hezbollah will stop firing at Israel is if the genocide in Gaza ends. And that remains the same. So I'm curious what your thoughts are after that speech yesterday.
Well, the speech really, it is typically what I thought it would be. Calm, contained, realistic, self-critical in some sense, but really very confident. They know their fight. It is very important to understand that this is a war where our people, the Lebanese people, we have seen this amount of death in the history of our war. The technological superiority of Israel does not come from their special brains. It comes from the billions of dollars. It comes from the American impunity. It comes from the backing. It comes from the state of what they are and how they came from all around the world and took our land. By that, using that, they always used their technological warfare. They used planes when we had our homes in the beginning, and they always bombed tents with their planes. So using technology on indigenous people is not superiority, it's just colonizing. So I think the speech, Sayyid Nasrallah's speech yesterday, promised us the retaliation and also promised us something more important, that the actual warfare that is on the ground, he reminded us that what Netanyahu is trying to do is to get his settlers and his colonizers back to northern occupied Palestine. And this, and I take his promises very seriously, because the last time he promised that people will get out of the Israeli prisons, we saw them freed after the 2006 war round. Lebanon's Hezbollah, when they say
Thank
Hezbollah
you
stronghold,
for the 10 biddies.
Lebanon is a country. It is all a stronghold of Hezbollah. Babies, elderly, every civilian is a stronghold of Hezbollah. Because the more you kill, the more people will be pro-Hezbollah because they are their protectors. When you tell them that you kill them in their sleep, in their homes, in their schools, everybody is going to stand behind the rockets that deter you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I always do say that the only thing standing in the way of Israeli rape dungeons across Lebanon, as they've created in Palestine, and just mass slaughter, is Hezbollah. And I want to ask you on that note, we heard, again, like you said, you had to hear somebody say it yesterday, Israel's ingenuity, Israel's creativity. I mean, this is a country that gets billions of dollars of handouts from the West. Of course, they're going to have good, superior technology. What I find ingenious in many ways and creative is the kind of technology we see on the side that's being sanctioned and bombed all the time. And here I want to ask you about Hezbollah specifically, because we've seen some really interesting unveilings from Hezbollah. More recently, we saw Hezbollah's created tunnels inside of mountains. Which, I mean, you got to say, in a country like Lebanon that's constantly being spied on and watched, the ability to create to build tunnels in mountains, I mean, that is quite ingenious. That is quite innovative. All the words they used to describe Israel's handouts, people are creating under sanctions. So can you talk a bit about that aspect of Lebanon's resistance and the fact that they've been able to domestically create their own weapons, own equipment, own tunnels in really innovative ways?
Well, the thing is, they are very old in this fight, and this is their land. They know it. They understand it.
Yeah,
They love it.
Manuel.
It loves them. It protects them.
This is Rania Kalik and Gadi Francis. Rania Kalik is on the left, and then Gadi Francis in the middle.
Them, the trees, the rocks. These are tunnels. I suppose I could see the fingerprints of Imad Mughni all over them. And Mustafa Badruddin and Hassan La'is and also Fuad Shukr and probably Aqil. And I want to tell you, this is why I want to go to this the first point where we spoke about the generation. You are speaking to an ideological.
What do you mean, LT9K? I mean, screaming at them to vote for Kamala Harris. Still his take. I don't know. I don't follow.
Iran backed. They say Iran backed. It's Iran armed. And the Iranian weaponry is being sold to Russia right now. Russia, which knows what it's buying, you know, like as if you're asking Rania about gym clothes, you know, like she's the expert.
This is true.
So when the Russians are buying weaponry from Iran, I mean, that's a statement of the brand, right? So you're talking about an ideological group that today I visited a mother, her son was martyred in that attack. He's not a combatant. He's an active, his father is an MP, you know? So I was paying condolences and it really is, I went heartbroken. I left her house extremely inspired and strengthened and empowered. Because she said, you know, maybe some people were, I quote her here, the mother of the martyr. Haji زوجة يعني she's the wife of MP Ali Ammar. What a woman. You know what she said to me? She said, you know, with a smiling, grateful face, blue eyes. I just want to reiterate, like, because maybe if we're not brown, you take us as humans.
Right.
So she has blue eyes and
Smoke weed every day.
She's really smiling and telling me, you know, this land was a little bit tired.
Wait,
and
it's
people
weed?
might have been a little bit tired after like coming down from the south and the change. And people are really in pain in Lebanon because southern Lebanon is like the heart of Lebanon. So the ongoing war and attacks on people and villages and destruction of homes and buildings and also like the migration, the local migration, the internal migration that has happened. So she said maybe people were tired and that land requested blood and we gave it. And this is a woman whose son, who's very special son, because obviously he was friends with all of the media people that I know. I didn't know him personally, but he's friends with all our friends, Mahdi. So I was like, this woman is feeling like that. This is just, I'm telling you this story because this is one example of this ideology. So you have this ideology, the Iranian globally acclaimed weapons, and it is your land. And your leaders who are now like old, but they passed on to generations and generations and they multiplied and they strategized, are the peoples who deterred the United States Marines in year 1983. You're coming 40 years later to this brand of people. So I suppose what we saw in the tunnels in Imad 4, every time they show us something, everything my mind can think about is like, if this is what they are ready to expose, What are they hiding?
Right. But I'm at 4. That suggests there's 3 of them and then maybe a few after, right? In terms of those tunnels. And they've obviously
Maybe it's 4 per village.
Right. Exactly. 4
Our
per
land,
village, could you imagine?
our land is really mountainous. How many mountains do you have in your small town? I really want to. You have the smallest town maybe in Shuf area, Majd
Yeah.
al-Balad.
Well, Alay.
Okay, and Alay. How many mountains your little town has?
A lot. A few. Yeah. So each of those mountains maybe has a tunnel. Who knows? Maybe 4.
I don't think so. No, what I'm trying to say is that our land is really mountainous.
Yes.
So and the south is really strong, and also we know it just like the palms of our hands as Lebanese people. So I don't think anybody is willing to face Hezbollah directly. The thing is, Netanyahu knows that we will not go into a full-blown war because we care about human life, because we are humans, decent human beings. So all he's trying to do is to keep on attacking us, keep on hurting us, trying to take us into war, because he cannot return his settlers back, because he cannot eradicate Hamas, because he cannot eradicate any kind of resistance, because he has a problem. If he stops killing people, the Israelis will overthrow him. He's gonna keep on doing that until a new American administration is in place, and maybe he gets a new way out of his existential crisis. I really think it's a matter of time, and he might be the last person to rule this entity, because if we could do 300,000 per year, how many millions are there?
You mean Israelis leaving?
Yes. I mean colonizers going back to their land because they have the dual passports.
Where they're actually from. Before I move on to the next topic here, and I actually want to go back to some of what you mentioned, I want to remind people who are watching to make sure that you smash that like button, you guys. It helps boost us in the algorithm.
So now we're live, really? Yeah,
we are live.
People
We're
are
live.
talking. Okay, I just opened the comment section. Sorry.
Oh gosh, now she's watching the comments. So Ghadi, I want to ask you, I know we talk about this every time I have you on, but I think it's important to reiterate because we have mostly an American audience and they are inundated with propaganda about Lebanon, about the region. And as far as, CNN covers it and New York Times covers it and whatever the State Department says about Hezbollah is that they are a terrorist organization. They're using all of Lebanese as human shields, and that Israel's right to attack Hezbollah because Hezbollah is just always hurting Israel. So I want you to just very simply explain to our audience, who is Hezbollah? What is this group? Because yes, they have a military wing. They also have a political wing that, are elected to parliament. So what is Hezbollah in the Lebanese context?
It's a political party. It is present in the Lebanese parliament. It has the majority of the Lebanese votes. So it has the biggest blocs and alliances in the Lebanese parliament. It is decisive. Now, the politics in Lebanon was not built on preferences or left, right, and center. It was built on people since the beginning of Lebanon, people who want sovereignty and people who prefer to have alliances with the West and people who like to have alliances with the East. And there were like deals between these entities in Lebanon. In the Lebanese civil war, Hezbollah was not present. Sorry, I lost my electricity here for a second.
Lebanon.
I have a lithium battery in my office. And next time the Israelis choose to have a terror attack, I might die just with a bomb placed in my land. And I'm talking to you, and I'm really as calm as can be. This is because I am a Lebanese person. If I was an Israeli settler coming from America, taking a Palestinian family's home, I would be under the table now because it wouldn't be my ancestors' land, and I wouldn't want to defend it. Now, this is the difference. You know? Going back to what Hezbollah is, it's a political party. It gained the hearts and the support of the people because it chose to fight the Israelis and not vice versa. People in Lebanon were occupied by Israelis. The Israelis used to occupy our land. They used to kill our children. They used to imprison our people. They used to confiscate our riches. They want to take our waters, our rivers. They used to rape, they used to slaughter, they used to place and arm groups and militias so that there would be civil unrest and assassinations. This is what they used to do in Lebanon. And the Lebanese people chose to fight them, and they won. And the political parties like Hezbollah, before Hezbollah, there were other political parties that gained the solidarity and the support of the Lebanese majority. So this tells you that whoever chooses to fight Israel will take the majority of the Lebanese people's votes. So this is what Hezbollah is. This is why you have MPs, members of the parliament, of the Lebanese parliament, which is in the United Nations, and they are Hezbollah. Now it has been listed as a terror organization by the administration that killed million Iraqis, by the administration that aided the Saudis to impose the biggest humanitarian crisis of the century in Yemen. This is from the administration that actually gives weapons and aids Netanyahu in the most televised genocide in human history. So the definition of terrorism does not come from the United States.
Yeah.
You know? And on the contrary, if the American administration likes you, I have a problem with you. You must be doing something wrong.
Right. That's completely accurate. I want to play devil's advocate here, because Hezbollah is criticized in two ways. I want to ask you the first way first. Hezbollah is, and you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but I want you to elaborate. Hezbollah is portrayed as, and by some Lebanese, the kinds that align themselves with the West, as well as people in the West will say Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran that's holding Lebanon hostage. It's dragging Lebanon into a war with Israel. They're the ones who struck Israel first on October 8th. Why are they still doing this? If they just stop, Lebanon would be fine. If Hezbollah would just stop and give up their weapons, Lebanon would be fine. It would be like Dubai. Or, whatever, name your country, Singapore. I don't know. What's your response to that criticism?
We like being Lebanon. First of all, we don't want to be anyone else. We are very happy in being who we are. We are very patriotic in that sense, all of us, with our different views. Yes, there are some people who don't like Hezbollah. There are some people who have a problem with the religion being the ideology. I am one of these people. I'm a secular people. Yeah, I'm a secular person, sorry. So there are people who'd actually prefer to be pro-Israel. But the problem is that they are so, allow me to say, dumb. Because they might die in an Israeli strike as we speak now while they're passing by in their city. So whatever the propaganda is telling them is not true. But you cannot blame them. They are under a lot of propaganda. And the war is a war of information and of designation today. It is a war like that. Had anyone spoke about what happened to 3,700 Lebanese 2 days ago in any manner as equal humans to what happened to the settlers on October 7, although the Israelis killed their own, and I will never say any sentence otherwise, they killed their own in Nova Festival. The Palestinians wanted live hostages. The people who are killing the hostages are the Israelis. They killed them before and they killed them during, and they're still killing them also as we speak. So all this is, I can understand that people under the propaganda have a problem with the Hezbollah, and I can understand that people do not like what Hezbollah stands for. They don't like Hezbollah's alliance with Iran. I understand them. But to say that they came in a parachute from outside Lebanon and they chose this war, it's unlikely. The only reason why Iran was able to spread its influence in the Middle East, into Syria, and into Lebanon in particular, and into Palestine, is because it aided the indigenous people in their fights. When Iran was with the Shah, when Iran was with the United States, it had zero influence in Lebanon. It had zero influence in Palestine. It had zero influence in Syria. It had zero influence in Yemen. So Yemen's retaliation today, Iraq's retaliation today, Syria's retaliation, or even like remaining alive, survival today, or Lebanon or Palestine, all this was aided by the Iranians. So you cannot really find it unlikely that these peoples or these groups see that the Iranian solidarity helped them. Had the Emirates, because you spoke about the Emirates, has the Emirates or Singapore or Russia or China or Portugal or Spain or anybody aided that cause, they would have the same influence.
That's true.
It's not it's regardless of your prejudice and your feelings today, even if you want to fight a group, you must understand what they stand for. I find it really, because when you tell me, you or any colleague or any friend, like, what do you think about people saying this, that, and that? Some people in Lebanon say this, that, and that. I mean, at that point, 1 year into genocide, Rania, I do not want to even validate their presence with a reply. If you chose to be that ignorant, that racist, that apologetic for human eradication in that sense, and for dehumanizing of your own people, because of your lack of self-confidence, you always think the white person is right, the white colonialist is right. So yes, let me stand with the powerful. I cannot even talk to you at that point. For me, you are just the typical person who chose to die hanging on to the bottom of the helicopter, the American helicopter in Kabul airport.
Yeah.
You are that person to me. I don't want to speak to you.
Wow. That's very powerful. Before I ask you this next question, I want to remind people to make sure you hit the like button. It helps boost us in the algorithm. There's almost 1,500 people watching and only 640 likes. So half of you have not smashed that like button and half of you can't possibly be watching.
Yeah,
I hate you.
smash
So
the like
like
button.
the show, guys. It's the least you can do. Okay, so Ghadi,
You know,
other
in the reference to
criticism-
the Kabul airport, I just want to explain why. Because some people came, when the Americans came to Afghanistan, they thought, I'll be with the Americans, they're going to win. 20 years into that, millions of people, destruction. Who did they give it to when they were leaving? To Taliban. And where did the people who stand with the Americans stay? At the airport, waiting for a chance to be lifted outside of the country. These are the people who stand with the American administration today as we are in this war. If you stand with the Americans and you're Lebanese, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pupu
No,
Salma.
that's very true. That's absolutely true. I want to ask you from the other end. Another criticism that I'll hear, or see mostly online sometimes, is Hezbollah's not doing enough. It's actually funny. Sometimes that comes from the same people, but then sometimes I think it comes from people who want them to do more. Like, why aren't you hitting Tel Aviv? Why aren't you, bombing or assassinating Israeli military officials? Why aren't you retaliating more harshly when they commit terrorist attacks against Lebanon? So I'm curious what your response is to that criticism.
My response is, if it's the loving criticism, some people really like, why aren't we using all our power? I would say I wouldn't know to call the shots. They have been succeeding in retaliations, and I think if Nasrallah said yesterday, if Netanyahu put his aim, the settlers coming back to the north, and we were able to not allow him take his target, we're still winning that battle. I mean, today I used this metaphor or this comparison. I don't know if it works. If they're playing a football
funny.
game,
Welcome
they
in.
did not really score.
Hello there.
They did not score anti-Hezbollah. They did not score. What they did is that they killed one of the players, which is like anti the rules. So it's not superiority. I think Hezbollah knows how to fight the Israelis very well on their own terms. They know what they have. They know their time. They know their weight. And I think one of the main purposes and targets they have set for themselves is to protect Lebanon. Let me think and entertain that idea. If Hezbollah strikes, and they can. They can. If Hezbollah strikes today any big target in Tel Aviv, like a mall or something, what happens the next day?
Yeah, that's a good question. The next day, all-out war, probably.
And then Hezbollah's people will be in their very well-built tunnels. They are 100,000 fighters. They are prepared financially, logistically, ideologically for that fight. Who will pay the price? Me personally, I will not be able to sit in my office. You will not be able to go back to your home. Our friends, our communities. They are calling the shots because they know the Israelis very well. And they know that this war has a part that is the diplomacy of the war, that is the time. Netanyahu is trying to salvage his own political career by doing anything. And I said, I'm going to take you back to the north and I'm hurting Hezbollah. But he has no muscles, no superiority, no strength. He's not hurting Hezbollah. He's not scoring. He's not returning his hostages against Hamas in Gaza. Just as equally, he's not even being able to bring the people back to their so-called homes, which are settlements. So in the end, this is land that Hezbollah single-handedly liberated. Colonizers out. This equals liberation. So who's still winning on the ground? Inside Al-Mutalli, occupied Al-Mutalli, inside northern occupied Palestine. Who's there? No one. Hezbollah's Katyusha. Okay.
No, I think that speaks to a really important point.
Sure.
I think that
just one second, Manuel.
The way it looks from the outside, all we see, especially in the West, is our phone screens showing one massacre after another in Gaza. It's just endless starvation, rape, torture, just murder left and right. And then you see Lebanon, and Lebanon, there's terrorist attacks. They're hitting Beirut. It looks so hopeless. and just like it looks like Israel's succeeding, even though, like you mentioned, they haven't actually achieved any of their military goals. So what's this? I mean, I mentioned a lot of this is psychological warfare. I imagine a lot of Lebanese are walking around feeling very uncomfortable after what happened this week and quite frightened because the violence was so random. So I guess I'm just curious, what's the sentiment on the ground? And is Israel's psychological war, even if they're not gaining anything militarily, is it working by terrorizing civilians this way?
I think it is really working for the good of Hezbollah.
Interesting.
If we want to be factual, what happened on the ground, and Lebanese politics, Rania, there are Lebanese forces, people who went and gave blood to Hezbollah non-combatants. Do you know how big that is? There are people who work all day and night anti-Hezbollah in politics who couldn't, and I'm speaking to you and I have who couldn't see their brother Lebanese like that, who couldn't see their brother humans. There are humans in Lebanon who stepped over every difference they have, and they are doctors and they are nurses and they are blood donors, and there are countless people who said, I will give an eye. Let me share my eyes. I'll give one eye to one of these guys who's going to go and fight on my behalf in southern Lebanon. Let me give a kidney. Let me give a liver. People were like that. These were requests coming to Lebanese hospitals. So exactly what Mahdi Ammar's mother said, what Hezbollah MP's wife, and she's also an activist, a political activist, because do you think that Hezbollah doesn't have powerful women activists? Where are their women? How do they raise these communities? So I take you back to what she said. Exactly that happened. This blood was a big sacrifice. This gave every single person in Hezbollah the feeling of, no, these people are around us, our community is around us, our hospitals are around us. And also it reminded the Lebanese who Israel is and what Israel is willing to do, what kind of criminality they are. So in the psychological warfare,
Thanks for the alert,
it would work
AC.
if we were cowards coming from Europe or Northern America or wherever and taking other people's lands. Yes, it would have worked. Our text messages from cyber attacks on the Israeli settlers, and they are under the
I'm glad
table.
you're seeing a
While
chiropractor.
today, I saw this, like I heard the strike yesterday with the Nasrallah speech. There were like two planes here, above us. And I'm like listening to the speech, I didn't really move. You see? So psychological warfare, and I'm not only speaking about me, our neighbors, my community. I'm surrounded with a Christian community. And we're all like, yeah, okay, what's gonna happen? This is how the Lebanese are dealing with everything, because we are children of war and a lot of vengeance. So when we are giving these sacrifices, we are not like, please, I want this to stop. No, it's like, please, I want justice because I've paid a lot. I've sacrificed a lot. I'm not going to go back now. I'm not going to step back now.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you for the super chats. I see a bunch of people put stuff in the super chat. Here's one of them. Thank you so much, Zohra. She says, I'm so sorry for what you all have endured this week. I have no doubt that Israel will suffer greatly for these atrocities. What the hell? I'm an American with Afghan parents, and that helicopter comment. Oh, sorry. I guess she didn't like the helicopter comment. Gross and insensitive.
No, this is why. Yeah, I'm sorry, Zara. This is why I took an extra 20 seconds to describe what I was trying to.
No, I get what you were trying to say. I get what you were trying to say, but sorry, I thought that was insensitive. But also appreciate the super chat. Weird. Okay, bit of a contradiction there.
What? No, she wanted to make a point, but what is the super chat feature? I don't know.
Oh, on YouTube, people can do a super chat. They can like donate money, and then if they do, I'll read their comment. So I guess she really wanted me to read her comment, but I appreciate your.
It's very no. I really respect people really putting themselves out there to defend their ideas, and it's especially for that, Zohra. Why I interrupted my dear professional friend Rania, and I just like I stuck 20 more seconds to describe that, because I thought it was harsh to someone who's not an Arabic speaker like me, because I most of the time think in Arabic, speak in English. It's not my mother tongue. I'm only illiterate like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think I totally got what you were saying. Anyways.
Yeah, I know. But because it was humanitarian, like it was painful to see someone die like that,
Yes, it was. But I want to ask you about, because since we're talking, we'll segue from the helicopter because it was an American helicopter. I want to talk about the American responsibility here. I'm sure you've seen over the last few days, every time Israel's done carried out these horrific crimes, the Americans will say, we didn't know about it. We didn't know about it. But then they'll go on and
nothing to do
justify
with
it.
it.
But their
Israel
hands
has
aren't
the
on
right to
anything.
do
And
it.
I think it's really important because in the US, we're
It's literally
often,
what they say.
you know, especially even in some left media, we're told, oh, it's, you know, the Israelis controlling American policy, as if the Americans are just like these children or something who don't really know what they're doing, and the Israelis are just able to squeeze out of them whatever they want. And I'm just curious how you see. I don't see it that way. I see the Americans as being responsible, but I'm curious how you see it, as a Lebanese person who's been a war correspondent all across the region.
Well, you know, I don't try to say that I'm an expert on American politics. We see what the Americans send to us. But in following this war, I'm learning a lot about the American community, about the American youth, about you as an American. I'm learning about the good Americans, the humans, the politicians that are good, not bad. And I'm also learning that maybe America is hijacked by Israelis. I'm starting to feel for you guys. I mean, are you free as a journalist in the United States to speak about Zionism like I am here? Do you have equal freedom? I don't think so. I don't think so. You're not even free as a college student, as someone who's supposed to be thinking on behalf of the future of a country. They're trying to even silence these. So I ache for what I think or thought the American educational social dream would be, because I went to an American school in Lebanon, and I had an idea like, okay, this is where you can like articulate, and if you do your work, and there's like the meritocracy in things, and there's the justice and whatever, and the human rights. So I think many of the American people do stand for that, and their voices are being hijacked by Zionist funded politicians and media and businessmen like Elon Musk and so on. And everybody who chooses to stand outside that, they're either killed or canceled. So I feel so sorry for that in America. So going back to what the Americans can do, well, like there's a poll today that someone posted on your Twitter announcement of this live stream that said that 69% of Americans are anti-funding Israel. According
That's
to
huge.
some poll.
That's huge, and that's a new development.
Yeah, so I don't want to blame the Americans for what their governments are doing, and I don't think there is an actual governance in America. So in general, being in this part of the world, I want to say that the American foreign policy has never been just to us. It's never been humanitarian to us. They've always had a hegemony approach to our people. They've never been good to us in any sense. They've never been good to Iraqis. Okay, they removed Saddam Hussein for freedom or for removal of chemical weapons, and then who did they put and what did they do? And what did they take from Iraq, and how did they leave Iraq? They came to Afghanistan. How did they leave Afghanistan? Going back to that comparison. They came to Palestine and backed these people, and they saying because they like democracy. Are Israelis democratic? Is this what democracy looks like? So in general, the US foreign policy has always been hegemony and looking for its interest. I think it's time that the Americans, the American policy makers understand that they have to free themselves from Israel, because Israel will soon not exist anymore, because an apartheid state does not exist in South Africa anymore, and injustice cannot prevail in this world. And I think for the history, imagine, I mean, where is Hitler in history now? He's a demon.
Yeah.
What Netanyahu did up so far has surpassed what Hitler has done, and he has televised it. So even if you are in denial today, in the present, in the future, you will be remembered exactly the same, or even worse.
Another Hitler, another Nazi state. I also just want to put this up. Thank you, Johan, for the super chat. He says, praying for Lebanon from India. So thank you to our, our Indian friend. Thank you to our Indian friend. So, and I also want to remind people again, make sure you like the stream, you guys. It helps boost us in the algorithm because of all the shadow banning.
Do everything to support independent journalism.
Yes,
I mean, this is part of the resistance, really.
Well, that's why they suppress us.
The APAC media, you know,
resisting the corporate APAC media. I want to ask you, Ghadi, as we approach October 7, 2024, it's going to be a year of genocide in Gaza. I don't think we're going to see, I mean, I would love for it to end, but I don't see any signs that it's going to end in the next couple of weeks before we hit that horrific milestone. So I'm just curious, as we approach that year anniversary and we see the escalation In Lebanon, we see escalations across the region and the potential for a bigger war that might be tied to the American election. The way that Israel, likes to kind of play things out when the Americans are distracted. But yeah, what are your thoughts as we approach this anniversary of October 7th, 1 year of genocide in Gaza?
I think 1 year of genocide and all sorts of weaponry and impunity and billions of dollars and tons of ammunitions and chemical weapons, and the world will always forever remember the scene of the Israeli soldiers being dragged by their t-shirts outside their tanks. The lie has been debunked on October 7th. The lie that Israel has the genius has been debunked. And all this time, what Netanyahu is trying to do is to salvage that lie, because breaking that lie is the first actual step of beginning of breaking the whole Zionist entity. This is where we are. We have put a lot of blood in the decades, in the ancestral grounds of this war. Yes, hundreds of thousands. The Lancet say that maybe the 186,000 would actually end up being the actual number of deaths in Gaza. And now the number has surpassed that. This is a big number. But in the sense of the 76-year-old struggle, this is probably like the beginning of the end and the last sacrifices in the road to the liberation. There is no way on earth that this entity can stay. They know it. Inside their brains, the Israelis know that they will not stay in this land like that. The Israelis know that how they started is not how they are internally. They're not confident. They're not there. They have no image anymore, and the whole world knows them for who they are. Right now, they're just bullying the world. How much can a bully win? Will they bully the US forever? I don't think it's going to happen. So I think this is a long struggle, and I think we will be having a live coverage, Rania, next month and after that. And there will be strikes on Lebanon and assassinations. And I promise you, the Lebanese people will remain like you always know them, and we're waiting for you to celebrate Christmas with our families in Lebanon, while the Hezbollah Lebanese fighters protect us on our behalf in the southern Lebanon from the baby killers.
I want to show this comment from Beatrice. Thank you for your super chat. She says, I just came back from Palestine, more impressed than ever by Arab culture and resilience. Sending all my love to you all in the Middle East and hopes for true freedom and justice for all of you soon. So thank you for that comment. Ghadi, I want to ask you, since you just mentioned more strikes to come, I guess the big question on everybody's mind after what we saw transpire over the last few days is there going to be an all-out regional war? I mean, some people might even argue there already is an all-out regional war. It's just not as apocalyptic as we might think. But that really big war, the big war. Israel is playing with fire, right? They seem to be constantly testing Lebanon, testing Hezbollah, testing other regional players. In your opinion, given all your experience in covering the region and everything you know, and you are very knowledgeable, do you see this snowballing into a bigger war?
When we say a bigger war, you mean the ground invasion? Ground invasion is something impossible for the Israelis. It is impossible to attain. The only thing they can do is what they're doing now. An all-out war is already present. It's only that their capacity to do more is not here. If they carry on bigger strikes, we would carry on bigger strikes. So they don't do it. They are still testing the patience of Hezbollah. And I think the people they are assassinating and the operations that are doing, in the long run, they're not really actually like bringing their settlers back. They still lost their land. So this is all a part of the psychological up and down of the warfare. I think a slow and brutal war, just like the one we are in on the Lebanese front, will remain, will be prolonged.
This is like the new normal. This is a normal situation now, is just having airstrikes happening.
And you know something, as people who already have a lot of injustice and death around you, many of the Lebanese want it to be like that. They don't want to be sitting and watching TV and watching Netflix as their brothers in Palestine are being in a Holocaust. It is a choice of life here because it's the same enemy, you know? And we are the same people. So a lot of people, I mean, people from Ireland, people from New York, people from South Africa, people from all across the world want to fight for the justice in Palestine. You could only be Lebanese if you're fighting for that too.
And then I also want to ask you, because like I mentioned, you are a war correspondent. You've been to Yemen. You've spent, you know, Iraq very well. You know Syria very well. Obviously, you know Lebanon very well. You've been to Gaza. You've been to the tunnels of Gaza. So you've reported from all these places, and now what we see is the involvement of people from Iraq, and also after the last few days, they offered to send fighters from Iraq to Lebanon to help Hezbollah, but Hezbollah doesn't need the help. You have Yemenis surprising us every so often. They're still blocking ships in the Red Sea. And then they've also actually hit Tel Aviv.
I mean, Manuel, and, you know, the whole conversation about Hitler versus Netanyahu, like, it's, I agree with Lady Badash that we probably just shouldn't compare the two. And you definitely don't measure a tragedy by the number of deaths. And especially when you factor in, like, if you do, you have to factor in population. Like, we're looking, like, percentage wise, what is happening in the decimation of the Palestinian people. You know, so like, it is not anywhere near this death toll of the Holocaust or of World War II, but it's the cruelty in it. It's the intention in the genocide. It's the very clear strategy being implemented by Israel to genocide the Palestinian people is very, very obvious through the statements and actions of Netanyahu personally. So, like, it's an apt comparison, and you can definitely say that this is a Holocaust.
A few months ago, and have repeatedly tried to and made it past the Iron Dome missile defense system. And then, of course, the people of Gaza are fighting under the most brutal circumstances from out of a death camp. And so, again, as we approach that 1-year anniversary, I'm curious your thoughts on this, I guess, era we're in, where you have a resistance axis across the region, where there are, you know, rockets and missiles flying to hit Israel from several different places. This has never really happened before.
This is why I'm very sure that the clock is ticking and this apartheid will not persist. Because the axis of the resistance today, what calls itself the axis of the resistance, is being able to disrupt $1 million worth of trades in its sea. It's being able to self-manufacture a $100 missile that would hurt $1 million tank. They're being able to persist on their land, whereas the colonizers are leaving. They are facing more and more enemies. The front, our front, the indigenous people, we once were alone. Today we have everybody with us. I mean, even Russia spoke about this as a terror attack. They are dragging the whole world into our camp. University students all across America, protesters all across the UK, European parliamentary figures, African legal figures, West, East, North, South. Everybody is joining the camp. So, I mean, you could only see, by the way, the Yemenis are like, I don't know, but it's like a very different, new, creative kind of exposing yourself. I mean, I still can't get over the idea that they had dressed up the ship team to expose that they are safe and, you know, and secure the hostages or something. So they had them front row in some religious celebration for Prophet Muhammad wearing all the...
That was hilarious.
It's like it's unreal, you know. It's like, really, this is like actually a crew of $1 million trade ship that is actually there in Yemen celebrating Prophet Muhammad, and So it is unreal what these people who have been impoverished and besieged and hungered. You know, there was a humanitarian crisis. There was a famine in Yemen, and they had the Saudis bomb them nonstop. And by the way, Lloyd Austin, who's now the Minister of Defense, he was the one in charge for the Americans and the Saudis for eradicating Yemen. Him personally, he was in the base there, and he took the calls in a sense, and then he said we should back that. So they know the Yemenis very well, and the Yemenis don't care at all. And then you go to Iraq. Iraq would send, Iraq and Hezbollah together salvaged Syria versus Obama.
Wow. Yeah, they did. You're right.
Bashar al-Assad from an impoverished country, for example, under war and sanctions since forever. Bashar, son of Hafiz Assad, was able to win over Obama's bet, the president of the United States. And the best Democratic president, as per Democrats up to date, and I think he's the best you're gonna ever get, guys, if this is how you're doing, But so this Bashar al-Assad stayed in place. He is in place now, and the Iraqis and Hezbollah and the Iranians helped him defeat Obama on Syria. So I think people should go back. First of all, if you've learned nothing in your life, you have to start learning to follow where the news is coming from. I mean, open your social media, follow influencers from all kinds and diverse political views, and you do the comparison for yourself. Who's genocidal? Who's pro-life? Who's a terrorist? Who's not? Who's racist and who's not? Try to penetrate like that blurry vision that has been imposed on us by this mainstream media that is always aligned with these people, and you will get to the truth. I mean, follow Rania and Breakthrough News and do donate for them, whatever that you're donating. Click. Make sure to click.
Yeah. Make sure. Now we've got Ghadi telling you to make sure you like the stream, you guys. Listen, actually, there's a few more comments I want to put up. We have our friend Zohra again. She says, guys, I was sending money as support and love at the exact time that comment was made. As an American in my Afghan roots, I follow your all's work, and it's made me less heartbroken and less hopeless because voices like yours speak from a place of truth and justice. Love, Zohra. So thank you for that.
We love you too.
We love you too. And then we have Cynthia Al-Khouri. Ghadi, I'm from Vintage Bale, and I want to thank you for your message and politics. Inshallah, we'll host you and Rania for a live stream from our village when we win. So thank you very much, Cynthia. Yeah.
See?
Thank you.
See the
Thank
spirits?
You,
Just for the viewers, Vintage Bale is like the first and front line with the occupied lands of Palestine, where the Israelis are bombing houses, killing people, destroying infrastructure, and always and forever failing to crush the Lebanese spirit.
I didn't know it's impressive. I mean, the Israelis tried in 2006 to invade Vintage Bale, and I think what's the story? It's like 5 Hezbollah fighters were too much for the Israelis to handle. I mean, it's as the Americans would say about the Israelis, it's quite innovative of Hezbollah, the way they're able to use limited resources to basically defeat an army that's limited to billions of dollars.
Too bad for the white supremacists. I mean, these are brown people who obviously are smarter than your white colonizers. I mean, too bad. You have to get over that.
So there's one more comment I'm going to show real quick. This is by Asuru Marai.
The UN.
I'm so sorry, I butchered your name. In the September 18 UN vote on having Israel leave the occupied territories, the countries voting no make up 5.6% of the world's population. The countries voting yes account for 70% of the people. I mean, yeah, it's a really good observation. That speaks to the undemocratic world that we live in. Ghadi, I want to ask you, because you born and raised in that 70% of the world that voted yes in Lebanon. And, so much of the world watches the American presidential elections because who wins does impact the entire world, even though they don't get to vote for who gets to be the world dictator. And I'm curious, as we enter this upcoming presidential election, I want to ask you to comment on our elections here. I mean, what are your thoughts? Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Does it impact you whatsoever who gets to be the next president of the United States?
I think what is very well observed and known now after the Biden administration is that it doesn't really take a president to rule in America, because things were happening, and I don't think he was present mentally or whatever, It wasn't really well for him. I mean, we could all see. So I think the president is not always everything, but it changes stuff. So nothing's gonna change. They're not gonna let us live as equal humans. They're not going to stop backing the Israelis, whether it's Kamala or Donald Trump. So for me, I don't really have an opinion about that. I feel sorry for Americans for being stuck with only these two. I mean, the autocracies of the Middle East seem better to me at a certain point because at least we don't fake being democracies. You know, at least we don't fake it. We are botched. We know we're botched.
You're not in denial. You're not in denial like the rest of us here.
Yeah. So I think I really do pray for the safety of all the American citizens because it looks to me like more and more terror and hatred and racism is emerging in the American society, and I think this is a very dividing kind of time in the world and polarizing time for the Americans in general because they are a big population. I just hope some people are saying a Democrat win would prolong the ability of nuclear talks and thus things would be in a way in the same momentum in the Middle East and that Trump is crazy. Well, duh. And that he would do unpredictable things. But the Russians want Trump. And these people say and analyze all kinds of things. I just think that it's an American matter at that point. And I really pray that some miracle happens to America and they have other choices than these two. I mean, how can Kamala, how can you be silent about a presidential candidate repeating a lie like that? And I mean, the world saw what happened, who killed whom on October 7th. The world saw that there was no mass rape. It was a debunked story. Why are you saying that? And you're telling us, the humans of the world, that you are a candidate on the same day when there was CCTV footage of Israeli sick, barbaric colonizers and mercenaries raping prisoners of war. Actually, they took footage. There was footage. And when Israelis were trying to protest that because they're really thinking like this is existentially gonna make us end in Israel, when they tried to protest it, they were like spread away by politicians who are in charge. And this is what you are backing, Kamala. I fear for the American people with these leaderships. I hope you guys can actually get a miracle from the sky called a third choice, you know?
Do you hear that? Somebody in the Middle East is hoping kind things on Americans, even as American weapons bomb Middle Eastern countries.
Well, I know the American people we like the American people. We like the civilian people of America. We see them and we see their protests and we see we all have family. I mean, you are an American person. How can I not love the Americans? I mean, you're one of the closest friends I have, yeah?
Yeah.
I have an American family in a way. So the politics and the policies of the United States administration in the Middle East would never reflect the hearts of true Americans. It would reflect the hegemony. It would reflect the Zionism. And this is why we say America's hijacked.
Well, so I want to show one last comment from, because this is a fan of yours. Johan is throwing in the super chat again to say, Reddy, I know you from the West Asia Post on Wyon. You are a brave journalist. Salute to you and the Lebanese people from a Syrian Christian in India. And on that note, Reddy, I want to ask you to tell everybody where they can follow your work. Because you're everywhere.
Oh, I do a lot of things.
Yeah, it's actually a hard question. This is going to take a while, guys. Sit back.
Okay. So I'm sitting now in my office. I have a company. It's called Gaia Media Services, where I do training and campaigning and publishing and production. This is like the 10th year of that. So I do my independent work from that office, and from that office I correspond to WION, a global television that comes from Delhi, and I contribute to all the platforms, the independent platforms that are spread away, like from North American ones to European ones to Asian ones to now I think Australian ones. We speak everywhere. This is in English, and most of my work is in Arabic. I have a published book on Syria, and I have around, but they're not on YouTube now. They were in local TVs, around like 300 televised reports of local coverage, and around 52 documentaries of war from different places of Middle East. They were in a series of a show called The Frontline in Arabic in a local TV. And if you want to see my work, I think you have to follow me on social media or to follow Rania. Press the like button, y'all. She's gonna be having me.
I love that. I love
No,
that.
I'm just trying to imitate you now.
It was
It's
good. It was a
hard.
good imitation. No, actually, you did a good
I
job.
think with my accent, it's gonna take me like 20 years of friendship with Rania to get a good accent.
Yeah.
But
Oh God, we don't
we're
want you to
getting
sound like me. I sound like too. No. I want to sound more like you. Ghadi, I want to thank you so much for joining me for the hour to discuss all of this,
Habibi.
and we'll definitely do it again soon. Stay safe.
Thank you, Rania. Stay safe. You too.
Oh yeah.
And I have argued, in fact, that.
And I think I am going to take a break as well. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Let's raid over to No Comment Chick CC. We can raid on both platforms, make some noise, show some love. I am a tired and hungry streamer. No, it's because I started streaming at like, I don't know, 9:30, and then I didn't go live on YouTube till like 2. So I'm like, I love you guys. Hey, and thank you so much for helping us get to 200 YouTube subscribers. Let's go. Trying to get to 500, trying to get that monetization. So, please hype up the YouTubes. And yep, we will be heading over to No Comment Chick. Irene. Raid incoming. Thank you, all the moderators. Thank you so much. You guys did amazing work today. And I will see you all soon. I love you so much. Bye.